I took a nap at home. A regular, innocent afternoon nap. Next thing I know, a booming voice that sounds like God's angry secretary is blasting through my skull telling me I've been drafted into some Lord Conquest game on a place called the Chaos Continent. 1,000,000 lords. Fight or die? 7 days of newbie protection. After that, a survival test where losers get their souls deleted. Fun. I open my eyes and I'm standing in a wooden shack so flimsy the wind doesn't even bother going around it. Just comes straight through. There's a fancy golden book in my hand, warm to the touch, which is apparently my Lord's Tome. Basically a magic smartphone with a shop, chat room, and trading system built in. I stumbled outside to assess my situation and immediately spotted 2 moons in the sky. One normal silver one enormous blood-red nightmare orb just hanging there like a bad omen. So yeah, definitely not on Earth anymore. Cool. Cool. Now here's the real kicker. My territory? It's a frozen wasteland. Not a forest. Not a grassland. An endless sheet of ice and permafrost stretching in every direction. Not a single tree, not a rock, not even a weed. Just ice, more ice, and in the distance, what looks like a frozen ocean. The only structure is my sad little shack sitting in the middle of a faintly glowing blue shield about 2 football fields wide. Oh, and I'm wearing summer clothes. Shorts and a t-shirt. On an Arctic tundra. If I step outside the shield, I'll freeze solid in 30 minutes. If I stay inside, I'll starve to death in a few days. The one silver lining? This place is so desolate that even the monsters don't want to be here. Can't get eaten if nothing's alive to eat you. I'm calling that a win. I checked my Lord's Tome stats. Territory level, 1. Buildings, shack. Troops, none. Resources, none. Equipment, none. Upgrading requires 800 wood and 500 stone. There's not a tree within visual range. I could cry, but then I spotted something at the bottom. Lord Talent. Extraordinary luck, a rank. My heart jumped. An A-rank talent? That sounds incredible. Then I read the description. When opening treasure chests, probability of high-tier rewards increases by 10%. 10%. Probability. It's a gotcha buff. My survival talent in this death game is literally slightly better RNG. Maybe it'll be godlike later, but right now I can't even survive the night, so forgive me if I'm not celebrating. I opened the regional chat to see how the other 1,000,000 lords were doing. Pure chaos. People screaming about spawning in deserts, grasslands, jungles full of wolf-rhino hybrids. Some guy was already having his farmers punch trees with their bare hands. Another guy offered 1,000,000 yuan to whoever could send him home. Someone else was just crying. Nobody shared their talents. Obviously, that voice literally told us we could eat each other's Lord Tomes for massive benefits. Sharing your cards in a game where everyone's a potential enemy? Only an idiot would do that. Some people tried to organize alliances, but with only 10 chat messages per day and no way to verify anyone's location or strength, it was dead on arrival. Back inside my igloo of sadness, I rummaged through my starter supplies. A rusty fish-gutting knife, an old fishing rod, a single worn cotton coat, some crappy pots and dishes, and a hard plank bed. Not exactly a survival kit, but there was also something interesting on the table, a faction conversion crest. One-time use. I could switch from my default human faction to orc, dwarf, elf, abyss, or undead. Each came with its own starter building and basic troops. Humans are the balanced safe pick. Orcs hit like trucks, but might literally eat me if morale drops. Dwarves are great crafters. Elves do magic and archery. Abyss demons are terrifyingly powerful, but will backstab me the second they get bored. And undead, weakest combat stats, hated by literally every other faction including demons, but they don't need food, don't get tired, and low-tier ones follow orders without question. Pure tools. Ultimate hard mode. I stared at that crest for a long time, brain spinning at full speed, weighing every option against my frozen hellscape of a starting position. Then I reached out and made my choice. Undead. Obviously. Look, I ran the math in my head, and it wasn't even close. Humans need food. I have no food. Orcs need food and might eat me if they get hangry. Elves and dwarves need resources and a decent environment. I'm on a frozen wasteland with literally nothing. Abyss demons? Those psychos would stab me in my sleep on day one. But skeletons? Skeletons don't eat. They don't sleep. They don't complain. They don't unionize. They just work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 0 breaks. For a guy with absolutely nothing to his name standing on a sheet of ice in his summer shorts, that's not just the best option, it's the only option. Sure, they're weak in a fight. But I'm not picking a boxing team. I'm picking employees who won't quit because I can't feed them lunch. I grabbed the faction conversion crest and said the magic words. Dark fog wrapped around my arm, seeped into my body, and the golden cover of my Lord's tome turned bone white. Spooky. Thematic. I approve. And then, right on cue, a completely different voice pinged inside my brain. Ding! Universal Enhancement System activated. There it is. The cheat code. The golden finger. Every transmigrator gets one eventually. Mine just liked to be fashionably late. The system's deal was simple. Feed it materials, get points, use points to enhance anything. The upgrade tiers went from white all the way up to red, and the cost scaled absurdly. 100 points for the first tier, 100 million for the last. Points came from recycling resources. 1 wood equals 1 point. 1 stone equals 1 point. Rare stuff was worth more. Then I scrolled to the very bottom of the recycling list and saw Divinity. 1 unit equals 100 million points. I mean, if I can kill a god, do I really need your 100 million points? But then again, 100 million points is exactly what you need to upgrade something to god tier. So, okay, fair enough. That's actually a solid trade. The really sneaky part? The system only cares about the raw material inside an item, not what it's shaped into. A block of iron and a full suit of iron armor give the same points. Which means buying junk equipment cheaper than raw material prices and scrapping it for full value is basically free money. This system is a recycling center with delusions of grandeur, and I love it. One problem, my current point balance was a fat 0, and ice and dirt aren't on the recycling menu. So this god tier system was currently about as useful as a gym membership I'd never use. I cleared my throat. System, got a starter gift pack by any chance? Several seconds of silence. The system equivalent of pretending not to hear. Then, reluctantly, starter gift pack detected. Open. Oh, so you were going to just pocket that, huh? Nice try. Open it. I got 1 item. 1 click enhancement times 1. Instantly upgrades any single item to god tier. My brain short-circuited. One thought blazed through like lightning. Enhance me. Make me a god. Right now, system rule, cannot enhance living things. Of course not. That would be too easy. Fine, enhance the system itself. Make yourself into an unlimited free upgrade version. Dead silence from the system. I swear I could feel it staring at me with pure disappointment. Okay. I got serious. And then the real answer hit me. Enhance my Lord talent. Think about it. A god tier weapon? Someone stronger would just take it from me. But a talent is branded onto my soul. Nobody can steal that. It's the only thing worth investing in when you're this weak. The system actually cooperated this time. Talent detected. Extraordinary luck. A rank. Confirm enhancement? Yes. Enhancement successful. New talent acquired. Destiny's guidance. God tier. Effect. All probability-based events are forced to trigger at maximum result within allowed rules. Includes treasure chests, item procs, troop recruitment, skill activations, everything. I had to read it 3 times. This wasn't luck anymore. This was reality manipulation. Every chest I open gives the best possible loot. Every random roll goes my way. Every small chance of elite unit becomes a guarantee. My frozen hellscape of a starting position just flipped from nightmare mode to easy mode in 1 click. I opened my newly bone-themed Lord's Tome and checked my updated building panel. My shack could recruit up to 10 skeletons for free. And right there at the bottom, in tiny text, extremely low probability of summoning an elite unit. Extremely low probability? Other lords would read that and shrug it off. Me? I read it and smiled. Recruit all 10. Let's go. 10 flashes of light later, I had my army. And by army, I mean 10 skeletons standing in front of my shack like the world's worst welcome committee. I checked their stats. 1-star basic units, sure, but every single one had the tag, Elite, next to its name. Normally skeletons are bottom-tier garbage, weaker than farmers, basically walking coat racks made of old bones. But mine? These guys were over 2 meters tall. Their bones looked like polished white jade instead of the usual rotting yellow stuff. One of mine could probably take 3 regular skeletons in a fight. I checked the recruitment description again. Extremely low probability of summoning elite units. Right. Destiny's guidance turned that, extremely low, into every single time. All 10, elite. I was already picturing the look on my future enemies' faces when they realized my entire undead army is built different. Now, the bad news. I still had 0 resources and 0 points. I looked around my shack, gritted my teeth, and did what any desperate man would do. I ripped apart my own furniture. Table? Recycled. Chair? Recycled. I even pried up stone tiles from the floor. After cannibalizing everything that wasn't nailed down, and some things that were, I scraped together a grand total of 10 points. I had 2 items left worth anything, a fishing rod and a rusty fish knife. I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. If 10 elite skeletons can't handle a problem, me waving a rusty knife around isn't going to change the outcome. I dumped all 10 points into the fishing rod. It upgraded from garbage tier white to the lowest green quality. The new description said it slightly improves fishing success rate. Okay, not amazing. But then I layered my Destiny's Guidance talent on top of it, and slightly changed to massively. The rod was still green, but it was now basically a fish magnet. I threw on the old cotton coat, grabbed my skeleton squad, and marched north toward the frozen body of water I'd spotted earlier. Could be a lake, could be an ocean, no map, no way to tell. The cold hit me like a wall. Even with the coat, I knew I couldn't stay out long. But the upside of living in a frozen hellhole? Nobody else is crazy enough to come here either. The weather itself is my fortress wall. I had my skeletons smash a hole through the ice with stone pickaxes. Tasted the water, salty. Bad news for drinking. But hey, salt crisis solved. Always look on the bright side. Now here's the plan. Ice fishing. Simple concept. You punch a hole in the ice, fish come to the opening to breathe, you catch them. Except I had no bait. Not a single worm, not a crumb. I searched the entire shack earlier and found nothing. So I was literally dangling a naked hook into Arctic water and hoping for the best. The hook hit the water, and immediately something yanked so hard it nearly dragged me into the hole. No bait. Empty hook. And a fish grabbed it anyway. Destiny's Guidance is absolutely insane. I screamed for my skeletons to grab me. And thank God elite skeletons are actually strong. About as powerful as a grown man. Even with all of us pulling, whatever was down there put up a serious fight. We hauled and dragged and finally wrestled out a massive silver cod that had to weigh at least 25 kilos. This thing was a meter long, flopping around on the ice like it was trying to breakdance its way back into the hole. Either this fish had a growth hormone problem, or animals on this continent are just built bigger. Way bigger. And this was just a regular fish at the bottom of the food chain. I didn't even want to think about what the actual monsters looked like. The cod was thrashing so hard it was scooting back toward the ice hole, so I ordered a skeleton to finish it off with the fish knife. This genius proceeded to hack at the hardest part of the fish's skull repeatedly while I watched in pain. I pointed at the eye socket. Next time, stab here. The skeleton just stood there. No brain, no skull, no processing power. They're great workers, terrible students. My lord's tome offered to butcher the fish automatically, and the result was beautiful. 20 units of fish meat, 1 fish bone, 1 set of innards, all sliced up with MasterChef precision. Each meat unit was about 1 kilogram. And then a world announcement dropped. 3 times in a row, because apparently the system wanted maximum drama. Congratulations to Lord Jiangchun for the first ever creature kill. Reward, bronze treasure chest ×1. 3 times. Across the world channel. Every single lord on this continent just learned my name. The chat exploded instantly. Who is this Jiangchun guy? He's already hunting. I'm still having my farmers chop wood. If I knew there was a first kill reward, I'd have gone hunting. Hunting what? The rabbits here are bigger than huskies. Go fight one and see who's really the prey. This dude must be ex-military or a professional hunter. No way a normal person pulls that off. Then the tone shifted, as it always does with internet people. Honestly, that Jiangchun guy isn't that impressive. If I went out hunting, I could have done it too. So what's in the chest? Hey, Jiangchun, share with the class. He's not talking, so the reward probably sucks. We're all struggling here. Shouldn't Jiangchun share his loot with everyone? We need to work together to survive? Yeah, sure. Random strangers demanding I hand over my stuff, because teamwork. Some things never change, no matter what universe you're in. The world chat was still going nuts about me. First they were curious, then came the sour grapes crowd saying they could have done it too, and finally the moral police showed up demanding I share my rewards for the greater good, right? Some, respected leader, should collect everything and distribute it fairly. Sure, because that's definitely not a scam. These people fall into two categories. The smart ones are trying to guilt trip me into handing over free stuff. Throw enough rocks at a tree, maybe a fruit falls. And if someone actually caves, they won't think, what a kind person. They'll think, what an easy target. The dumber ones are just jealous. Can't stand watching someone else succeed while they're still struggling. I didn't even bother getting angry. Getting mad at strangers on the internet is just hurting yourself for free. Besides, none of them even know which region I'm in, let alone how to reach me on this frozen wasteland. I closed the chat and moved on. Time to open my bronze treasure chest. The description said, 100% chance for green items, 10% for blue, 1% for purple. 1%. With Destiny's guidance, that's a guaranteed drop. I activated my talent and cracked it open. Purple light exploded out of the box. I got a purple tier single-edged sword called Evil Moon, a blue tier grave mound building blueprint, a green tier job change scroll, a white tier stone axe blueprint, 20 soul crystals, and 248 undead gold coins. I nearly squealed. This haul was absurd. A purple weapon from a bronze chest. Most lords would never see something like this in their entire careers. Evil Moon was beautiful. Light, razor sharp, sliced through thick ice like butter. Tier 4 damage, special traits, sharp, bleed, and lightweight. The item description even came with a warning. A purple weapon is basically a family heirloom for most territories, and waving it around in public is a great way to get robbed. Good thing I'm on a frozen wasteland where the only witnesses are my skeletons and some fish. I handed Evil Moon to one of my skeletons and assigned him fish-killing duty. The Lord's Tome can only butcher dead fish, so someone has to do the dirty work first. I went back to casting my line. Since only I can activate Destiny's guidance on the fishing rod, I had to be the one holding it. The 2 building blueprints I stored in my Lord's Tome for later. Can't build anything without materials anyway. The stone axe blueprint needed a workbench I didn't have yet, so that was shelved too. Then I looked at the job change scroll. Green quality lets me pick a hero class matching my faction. 2 options popped up, Death Knight or Necromancer. I picked Necromancer without a heartbeat of hesitation. I traveled to another world, and you want me to swing a sword like some common grunt? Please. If I'm going to do this, I'm doing it with style. Robes, magic, armies of the dead rising at my command. That's the dream. The scroll burned up and knowledge flooded into my head. 4 new skills, all green tier. Skeleton summoning. Use bones as a medium to summon tier 2 skeleton soldiers. Meditation speeds up mana recovery, but I can't move while doing it. Mana missile. Invisible magic projectile, tier 2 damage, 10-meter range. Bone explosion. Detonate one of my own skeletons like a bomb, tier 2 damage, 5-meter blast radius. Not bad at all. I had ranged attacks, summoning, and even a suicide bomber option if things got desperate. The mana missile being invisible was a nice touch. Enemies won't even see it coming. I grabbed one of the leftover fish bones and tried skeleton summoning with Destiny's guidance active. My head went a little fuzzy from the mana drain. The fish bone melted into black sludge, and the sludge slowly rose up and formed into a skeleton soldier holding a bone blade. Using fish bones to summon skeletons felt weird, but apparently summoning magic works more like a sacrifice. You offer materials to pull a creature from another plane. Fish bones, human bones, doesn't matter. Bones are bones. The summoned skeleton was tier 2, which was technically the best possible result from a basic level summoning spell. Destiny's guidance doing its thing again. But honestly, this little guy was kind of pathetic. Black bones, short and scrawny, nowhere near as impressive as my elite tier 1 skeletons from the shack. I wasn't even sure this tier 2 summoned skeleton could beat one of my elite tier 1s in a fight. Also, the mana cost was rough. I estimated I could summon maybe 20 skeletons before running completely dry. And running out of mana in a real-world setting? That dizzy spell I just got was a clear warning sign. This isn't a video game where you just chug a blue potion. So summoning an infinite skeleton army wasn't happening today. But having 4 combat skills on top of my fishing operation? I was in much better shape than 20 minutes ago. I set a rule for myself. Never let my mana drop below 2/3. If I passed out from mana exhaustion in this frozen wasteland, I'd become a very well-preserved corpse. Besides, meditation doesn't cost mana and has no cooldown, so I could just sit, recharge, and get back to work. And the work was glorious. With Destiny's guidance on the fishing rod, I was pulling up a silver cod roughly every minute. The bottleneck wasn't even the fish biting. They bit instantly every single time. It was physically hauling these oversized monsters out of the water. My skeleton crew ran a tight operation. I fish, they kill, the Lord's Tome butchers. Assembly line efficiency. After a few rounds, I'd stacked up mountains of fish meat plus enough bones to keep summoning more skeleton soldiers. Fish, summon, fish, summon. The undead army grows. The food pile grows. Everybody wins. Well, except the fish. Meanwhile, on the World Channel, the crowd that had been screaming at me to share my loot eventually ran out of steam. Nobody replied to them. I certainly didn't reply to them, and they each only had one world message per day. They fizzled out like wet fireworks. The smarter lords started going out to hunt on their own. Good for them. But most lords had a much bigger problem. Their troops needed to eat. All those farmers who'd been chopping wood and mining stone for hours without a single meal, their loyalty meters were dropping fast. And the rules were crystal clear. Below 50 loyalty, they might desert. Below 30, they might turn on you. I could feel the cold winning against my cotton coat. My body temperature was dropping, my stomach was completely empty, and I knew if I stayed out much longer I'd freeze to death for real. Time to head back. But first, business. I opened the trading platform and listed 5,000 units of silver cod meat. Price, 50 wood or 50 stone per unit. Or 20 iron ore. For special items like blueprints or rare gear, I was open to private negotiations. Was the price high? Absolutely. Outrageously high even. But that's how supply and demand works. 1,000,000 lords, most of them desperately needing food right now to keep their troops from mutinying, and I'm the only shop in town. The trading platform didn't have a single piece of food listed before me. Not one. Timing was everything. If I'd listed this stuff earlier when everyone was still optimistic, they'd have laughed at my prices. But now, half the chat was people panicking about their farmers' loyalty dropping into the danger zone. They weren't shopping, they were drowning, and I was the only guy selling life rafts. The channels exploded within a minute. Someone's actually selling food? It's that Jiang Chun guy from the first kill announcement. How does he have this much? Is his territory next to the ocean or something? Lucky bastard. These prices are insane though. All my farmers' hard work for some fish. Then came my favorite part, the choosing beggars. Can you lower the price? We're all from Earth. Show some compassion. Everyone's struggling. You should share your resources with the community for free. Yeah, a true leader would distribute food to those in need. The moral police were back, and somehow they were louder than before. The freeloaders always outnumber the reasonable people. That's just math. I felt absolutely nothing. Let them scream. Let's see who starves first, the guys sitting on 5,000 fish, or the guys with nothing but opinions. While waiting for the market to do its thing, I tried to figure out how to cook the fish. Small problem. I'd recycled every single piece of furniture and equipment for enhancement points earlier. No pot, no fire, no tools. The fish was super fresh and probably fine raw, but my earth brain still wasn't thrilled about eating sashimi on a glacier with my bare hands. My inbox exploded with over 100,000 friend requests. I skimmed through them. 99% were sob stories and begging. One guy actually had the audacity to say I should give him 1,000 units of food as a favor, and he'd repay me greatly in the future. Sure, buddy. Let me just hand over a fortune based on the promise of a stranger in a death game. I cleared all the trash and filtered for messages containing keywords I actually cared about. Blueprints, rare items, real trades. One name popped up, Dong Fu. I recognized him. Pretty sure he was the poor bastard from earlier complaining about rhino-sized wolves circling his territory. He had a workbench blueprint, green quality, plus a bonus wooden spear blueprint. The workbench needed 20 wood, 20 stone, and 10 iron to build, and it would let me craft basic tools and weapons. Actually useful. How much food do you want? I asked. 500 units. And you have to give me 20 wooden spears after you craft them. I frowned. 500 units of food was enough resources to upgrade a lord's shack with change to spare. And the wooden spear blueprint was basically instructions for sharpening a stick. The blueprint just automated the process. Too much, I said. Dong Fu came back with a counteroffer. Okay, I can take less food, but I really need those wooden spears. There's a giant wolf outside my territory that already killed one of my farmers. Nobody dares go outside anymore. Fair enough. The guy was desperate. I respected that he was willing to trade his best blueprint just to solve his problem. We settled on 100 units of food plus 20 wooden spears once I crafted them. Done. The trade went through. His blueprint appeared in my hand. 100 fish vanished from my inventory. Simple. Meanwhile, back on the trading platform, the real show was starting. All those people on the World Channel who'd been screaming about boycotting my overpriced fish? Yeah, that lasted about 90 seconds. The thing about a boycott is it only works if everyone commits. And when you've got a million hungry lords staring at a supply of only 5,000 fish, math wins over pride every single time. A few people quietly bought some. Then others saw the stock dropping and panicked. Then everyone panicked. 3 minutes flat, and every single unit was gone. The chat was beautiful. What the? I looked away for 1 second, and it's all sold out. 30 years of being single trained my fingers well. Grabbed 2 pieces. The moment I announced fish for dinner, my farmer's loyalty jumped 20 points. 20 points? I should have bought some. Can you list more fish, please? I won't hesitate this time. At Jiangchun, I looked at my warehouse. Mountains of wood and stone, plus a nice little pile of iron ore. All from fish. Reputation is overrated. Being the only food supplier in a famine is priceless. I also picked up a handful of basic blueprints from trades. Wooden bucket, wooden chair, simple bed, wooden spear. Nothing fancy, but useful. First order of business. I built the workbench using the blueprint from Dong Fu. It materialized inside my shack after I fed it the materials. Green quality, capable of crafting any item below green tier as long as I had the blueprint. I queued up 40 wooden spears. The workbench came alive on its own, consuming wood and spitting out identical spears like a factory line. 2 wood each, done in moments. I checked the stats. White quality, tier 1 damage, durability of 10. Just sharpened sticks, basically, but sharpened sticks can still kill things. The workbench produced perfectly standardized items. No duds, but no lucky upgrades either. Pure factory output. I traded 20 spears to Dong Fu for a single stone to complete our deal. I don't like owing people. He messaged back, thanks. You kept your word. If you find anything good, contact me directly. I'll give you a fair price. Deal. Can I add you as a friend? I accepted. First friend on my list. The wolves outside my door guy. Could be useful down the line. Now for the big move. I opened my Lord Shack panel. Upgrade cost. 500 wood, 500 stone. Materials sufficient. I hit yes. The shack transformed into a level 2 building. Recruitment cap doubled from 10 to 20. Next upgrade needed 2,000 wood, 2,000 stone, and 50 hemp rope, a new material I didn't have yet. And of course, the world announcement fired off again. 3 times. Maximum drama. Congratulations to Lord Jiangchun for being the first to upgrade his Lord Shack. Reward. Bronze treasure chest ×1. The chat went nuclear. This guy again. This is your fault for buying his fish. You funded his upgrade. Oh, shut up. What was I supposed to do? Let my farmers starve and stab me? Exactly. You produce 5,000 fish, and I'll give you all my resources too. Speaking of which, got any more fish for sale? I was too slow last time. I leaned back and smiled. Day 1 wasn't even over, and I was already the most talked about lord on the continent. Hated by many, needed by all. Exactly where I wanted to be. Somewhere out there on a nice flat plain, some lord named Wang Hai was staring at my world announcement with murder in his eyes. I didn't know this yet, of course, but apparently this guy fancied himself a business genius whose entire strategy was talk people into giving me their stuff. He'd been trying to convince other lords to hand over resources with nothing but promises and a PowerPoint smile. It wasn't working. Turns out people who are starving don't respond well to motivational speeches. He looked at my bronze chest reward and decided it should have been his. Jiangchun, huh? We'll see about that. Classic villain line. I'm sure he went right back to scamming his farmers afterward. Meanwhile, I finally had wood. Beautiful, wonderful, flammable wood. I struck up a fire, roasted some fish, and for the first time since arriving on this frozen nightmare continent, I ate a hot meal. The simple joy of warm food in your belly when you've been freezing and starving. I almost cried. Then I cracked open my second bronze chest with Destiny's guidance. Purple light, overflowing rewards, the usual. I got Ash Tower Blueprint, purple, Hero Contract Scroll, blue, Black Iron Sword Crafting Blueprint, green, Fireplace Blueprint, white, 20 Soul Crystals, and 324 Undead Gold Coins. The Ash Tower sounded incredible. It would let me remotely control my troops from a distance using some kind of descend skill, basically a command center. But the building costs made me want to throw the blueprint into the ocean. 6,000 stone, 2,500 wood, 1,500 bones, 600 hemp rope, 500 iron ingots, 200 copper ingots, 50 ash stones, and 5 death gems. I didn't even know what half of those materials were, let alone where to find them. Filed away for someday when I'm not living in a frozen wasteland. The hero contract scroll was exciting though. Blue quality lets me bind a hero up to blue rank to my territory. A contracted hero physically can't betray their lord. Heroes are game changers. A combat-type hero can solo 100 soldiers, and their special abilities can transform an entire territory's development. They're basically the foundation of any real power. I mean, look at me. I'd built my entire military force using nothing but my Necromancer class. That's what one hero class individual can do. But the real play today wasn't any of that. It was the Grave Mound. I built it at the edge of my territory. Cost me 300 wood, 600 stone, and 100 bones. Undead buildings always eat more stone than wood, and almost everything needs bones. Good thing I had a mountain of fish bones. The finished product looked like a creepy graveyard full of crooked tombstones. The Grave Mound could recruit Tier 2 skeleton soldiers for 1 soul crystal and 1 bone each. Basically the same quality as what my summoning spell produced, except building recruited units had a chance of rolling elite. But here's the thing. Spending precious soul crystals on Tier 2 skeletons was a terrible deal. Soul crystals recycled for 10 points each in my system, and my mana regenerated for free. Why pay for something I could summon myself? Unless I changed what the building produced. Selling fish was never going to be my long-term plan. Food prices would crash once other lords got established. History has proven 1,000 times over. The fastest path to power is war and conquest, not commerce. So I converted most of my trading profits into enhancement points and dumped everything into the Grave Mound. 110,000 points. 2 consecutive upgrades. Blue to purple to orange. The Grave Mound went from recruiting pathetic Tier 2 skeletons to Tier 7 skeleton soldiers. The recruitment cost went up to 7 soul crystals and 7 bones per unit. But critically, it didn't require any exotic new materials. Just more of the same stuff. The system had scaled up the existing unit rather than replacing it with something completely different. That was huge. I had 40 soul crystals, enough for 5 soldiers. I set recruitment to 5, activated Destiny's guidance, and hit confirm. 5 black-boned arms punched out of the graves. 5 massive skeletons crawled out of the earth, shook off the dirt, and stood before me in silent attention, waiting for orders. I pulled up their stats and my jaw nearly hit the floor. Tier 7. Elite. Skills. Hardened Bones. Rapid March. Heavy Force. Proficiencies. Intermediate Swordsmanship. Intermediate Combat Mastery. Their bones were described as tough as steel. They moved 30% faster than normal. They hit like battering rams. The flavor text said these were warriors so brave and powerful in life that death couldn't diminish them. When they rose again, they fought just as ferociously as they had when they were alive. These weren't shuffling zombie fodder. These were undead elite soldiers. 5 of them. On day 1, I looked at my little army, 10 elite worker skeletons, a growing pile of summoned cannon fodder skeletons, and now 5 Tier 7 killing machines, and smiled. Jackpot. Looking at the stats, one of my new Tier 7 skeleton soldiers could wipe the floor with an entire squad of the Tier 2 ones I'd been summoning with magic. These guys were on a completely different level. I crafted 4 stone axes, enhanced them to green quality, and handed them to 4 of my elite worker skeletons. The purple sword Evil Moon went to the 5th Tier 7 skeleton. He was now my personal bodyguard. Before heading out, I had a business idea. I turned all my remaining wood and stone into stone axes and wooden spears, then listed them on the trading platform. 12,000 stone axes, and 15,000 wooden spears. I priced the axes slightly higher since stone seemed to be scarcer than wood based on my earlier trades. I also added soul crystals as an accepted currency, 1 crystal per item. I didn't expect many takers on that since anyone who had crystals probably knew they were valuable for recruiting troops, but it was worth a shot. Here's the sneaky part. I listed the axes but held back on making the spears widely available. Axes help people gather resources faster, which means they produce more stuff for me to trade for later. Gotta grow the grass before you mow it. But spears? Spears let people hunt their own food, which would undercut my fish monopoly. I wasn't ready to kill the golden goose just yet. I enhanced my ratty cotton coat to blue quality. The difference was night and day. The cold went from slowly killing me to unpleasant but manageable. Then I assembled my forces and marched south. 5 Tier 7 elite skeleton soldiers, plus over 200 regular summoned skeletons. My own little undead parade crossing the frozen wasteland. Walking across this ice sheet really drove home why they called it a death zone. Nothing alive for miles. Just white emptiness in every direction. My scout skeletons spread out ahead and quickly found signs of life. By the time I caught up with the main force, a group of polar ice bears had already smashed several of my regular skeletons into bone fragments. Tier 6 monsters, each one nearly the size of a rhinoceros, covered in thick fur and fat that made normal attacks bounce right off. One of them spotted me, the only living thing in the group, roared, and charged straight at me on all fours. I watched it come with cold eyes. 2 of my disposable skeletons threw themselves at the bear's head from the sides and clamped on tight. I pointed my finger. Bone explosion. Both skeletons detonated against the bear's skull. The blast wasn't enough to kill it. Bone explosion scales with the skeleton's tier, and these were bottom-tier trash mobs. But the explosion left the bear's face scorched black, and its brain rattled. It stumbled, dizzy. That was all I needed. My bodyguard skeleton rushed in with Evil Moon and drove the blade straight through the bear's eye socket into its brain. Tier 4 sharpness cut through like the skull wasn't even there. The bear didn't die immediately. Even with a sword through its brain, it lay on the ice howling in agony. Terrifying vitality. I waited until it stopped moving before ordering the finishing blow, a clean decapitation. I wasn't risking my precious Tier 7 soldiers on a dying animal's last thrash. Regular skeletons I could resummon. These elite killers? Irreplaceable right now. I butchered the bear and my eyes went wide. 2,200 units of meat, 20 bear hides, 1,000 units of fat, 600 units of organs, 30 bones. One kill gave me more food than all my fishing combined. The fat and organs were edible too, pushing the total food count past 2,000. Being the size of a rhino has its downsides when someone's counting your calories by the unit. My skeletons found a wooden chest in the bear's cave. Lower quality than the bronze chests I'd gotten before, but with Destiny's guidance, quality barely matters. I opened it and got 2 items, a polar region territory map in green quality and a hemp rope blueprint in white. The rope blueprint alone was a lifesaver. I needed rope for my next building upgrades and had no idea where to get it. But the map was the real prize. After loading it into my lord's tome, a new map screen appeared showing everything within 100 kilometers of the bear's den. Several tribal settlements and one small town were marked. The best part? I wasn't actually deep in the polar region. Just a few dozen kilometers south, the frozen wasteland gave way to habitable land. There was a small town where beastmen and polar gray dwarves lived together. That meant trade routes, information, and eventually, resources I couldn't get from fishing and hunting alone. I wasn't ready to make contact yet, though. Walking up to a mixed-race frontier town as a weak undead lord with a skeleton army was basically volunteering to be target practice. I'd need real strength before introducing myself. The polar days were absurdly long, and I lost track of time completely. I spent hours sweeping the area around my territory, clearing out monster dens one after another. Nothing as tough as the ice bear, mostly Tier 4 snowmane boars and smaller creatures. My assembly line strategy worked perfectly every time. Regular skeletons mob the target, bone explosion to stun, Tier 7 elite delivers the killing blow. Each kill meant more bones, more food, more materials, and more bones meant more skeletons. The army kept growing with every fight. Back at base, I tallied up the day's hunting haul. 9,000 more units of food, piles of hides, fat, bones, and, most importantly, over 50 soul crystals dropped from killed monsters. Turns out enemies have a chance to drop crystals when they die. That one discovery told me everything I needed to know about how this world works. Expansion isn't optional, it's the entire game. I had 5 wooden chests from the monster dens, activated Destiny's guidance, and ripped them open one after another. Iron axe blueprint, stone pickaxe blueprint, a black iron sword, wood plank blueprint, warehouse blueprint, market building blueprint, cart blueprint, stone spear blueprint, plus some soul crystals and gold coins. Not as flashy as the bronze chest rewards, but extremely practical stuff. The market blueprint caught my eye immediately. Cost: 500 stone, 500 wood, 120 hemp rope. I didn't have rope yet, but I did have a mountain of grass that my trading customers had sent me as payment. The Lord's Tome could turn 2 units of grass into 1 rope. I cranked out 400 ropes in one batch. Problem solved. But first, the Lord's Shack needed upgrading. Level 2 to Level 3 cost 2,000 wood, 2,000 stone, and 50 rope. I hit upgrade, and for the first time, a progress bar appeared. 5 minutes. So upgrades take time now, and it'll only get worse from here. While waiting, I built a warehouse. Green quality, 800 wood, 200 stone, 80 rope. It had a passive effect that extended how long stored materials stayed fresh. I put my skeletons to work hauling the messy piles of resources off the ground and into proper storage. Organization matters when you're running a one-man undead empire. The shack dinged, level 3. Even got a name upgrade, Lord's Cabin now. Recruitment cap jumped to 40. The next upgrade needed 3,000 wood, 5,000 stone, 400 rope, and 100 stone bricks. I didn't have stone brick blueprints yet, so that upgrade would have to wait. Disappointing part? No world announcement this time. No bonus chest. Apparently, only the very first upgrades get rewarded. This game has 0 documentation. Absolute garbage design. 1-star review. I recruited 20 more free elite skeletons to fill my new slots. Free troops that don't eat, don't sleep, and can be stacked in a warehouse like furniture? I'll take as many as the system allows. Now for the main event, the market. I built it on the far side of my territory. What appeared wasn't really a market, so much as a courtyard surrounded by small wooden buildings. Nice enough, I suppose. Before I could even check the building's functions, my Lord's Tome pinged with a notification. Market construction complete. Would you like to accept a Goblin Trade Association salesman into your territory? There was a note. Since my faction was undead, the shop would stock more undead-related goods. Made sense. The way I understood it, the trading platform in the Lord's Tome was for deals between transmigrated lords. Free, instant delivery, no distance limits, but everyone's broke. The market was different. It connected me to the local economy, the native factions that had existed on this continent long before a million confused humans got dumped here. These native powers actually had real wealth and established supply chains. I accepted immediately. If it's a trade association, it shouldn't be dangerous. Within minutes, a short green-skinned creature materialized inside the market building. A goblin. Looked exactly like I'd imagined. Pointy ears, beady eyes, the works. Who the hell builds a market in the middle of the night? Making old Demo work overtime. I could hear him grumbling before he even stepped outside. In my defense, when you live in a polar region where the sun barely sets, the concept of night gets a little blurry. I made a mental note to establish a proper sleep schedule. I was a necromancer, not a warrior. My body wasn't built for all-nighters in sub-zero temperatures. I straightened my enhanced but still shabby blue cotton coat and waited at the market entrance with 2 Tier 7 skeleton soldiers flanking me. Probably overkill for greeting a salesman, but better safe than headless. The goblin finished his complaining, walked up to me, and, to his credit, didn't bat an eye at my ragged appearance or my skeleton bodyguards. He gave a polite little bow with perfect professional courtesy. Say what you want about goblins, but this one had customer service training. Greetings, young lord. Demo the goblin salesman. At your service. The little green guy looked exhausted but was doing his best to sound enthusiastic. I could tell this one had been professionally trained. He didn't even flinch at my shabby outfit. Smart. Anyone who owns a territory and can afford to build a market probably isn't actually broke. And even if they are, A good salesman can convince a broke person to sell their organs for a discount mattress. Demo himself was the exact opposite of subtle. Gold jewelry everywhere, flashy clothes, practically a walking billboard screaming, "I have money and I want you to know it." Peak goblin energy. "Welcome to my territory, Mr. Demo. The pleasure is mine." He glanced at my skeleton bodyguards and hesitated. I shouldn't pry, but why does a human lord have undead guards? I looked at him calmly. Because I'm an undead faction lord. Having undead guards seems pretty normal, wouldn't you say? Then I added, just a touch of edge. Surely the famous Goblin Trade Association wouldn't refuse business over something as trivial as race. Look, I needed this trade channel badly. But groveling would be a death sentence with a merchant. These creatures run on profit, not pity. Show weakness, and they'll squeeze you until your bones crack. Show a little spine, and suddenly you're a valued business partner. I threw in a compliment about the trade association at the end, just in case he was actually thinking about walking away. He wasn't. Demo shook his head, so hard his jewelry rattled. Are you joking? I was just surprised a human chose the undead path. That's all. We would never turn away business. All goblins worship one thing, and one thing only, gold coins. If you've got gold, we'd roll out the red carpet for a demon from the deepest pit of hell. He was practically vibrating with conviction. I felt like he was saying something inappropriate, but I couldn't quite prove it. Demo pulled out his product list. Sure enough, undead-specific items were included, which seemed to confirm my faction for him. But he kept sneaking weird looks at me. I could practically read his thoughts. He'd seen old men on the edge of death join the undead faction seeking immortality, but a young guy choosing eternal death voluntarily? He couldn't wrap his head around it. Whatever. His confusion wasn't my problem. He handed me the catalog. 5 items. Round wooden shield blueprint. 5 gold coins. Black iron sword, green quality. 10 gold coins. Leather armor blueprint. 30 gold coins. Undead magic skill scroll. Corrosive poison fog. 200 gold coins. Ash stone times 20. 200 gold coins. Total, 445 gold coins. I had enough for my chest rewards. The ash stones made my heart jump. I'd been wondering where on earth I'd find those for my Ash Tower blueprint. And here they were. 20 units, nearly half of what I needed, just casually sitting on a goblin's price list. Turns out gold coins existed specifically for trading with native factions. The Lord's Tome trading platform couldn't handle gold coin transactions. That was the whole point of building a market. While I studied the goods, Demo was studying my territory. I could tell what he was thinking. Village-level settlement. No living beings. Just skeletons everywhere. Standard beginner undead faction, nothing special. Then his eyes drifted past the protective barrier to the endless white wasteland beyond, and I saw a flicker of concern cross his face. He was probably wondering if this was the polar death zone. And the answer was yes. Yes, it was. But the professional in him kept smiling. A mature merchant doesn't care where the buyer lives. A goblin merchant especially doesn't care. Give him enough gold, and he'd get on his knees and call you daddy. Dear undead lord, have you decided on your purchases? Demo was warming up his sales pitch, ready to sweet-talk me into buying at least a few items so his midnight trip wouldn't be wasted. I'll take everything. Dear undead lord, these are truly exceptional items, and only through the Goblin Trade Association can you... Wait, what did you just say? Demo's brain short-circuited mid-sentence. His rehearsed sales pitch crashed into a wall because the customer just said the 3 most beautiful words in any merchant's vocabulary. I looked at him, confused by his confusion. Did I say something strange? No. Dear Daddy, I mean great undead lord. By the holy gold coin, you are truly generous. Demo later swore to me that in his entire career, he had never heard anything more beautiful than, I'll take everything. Pure poetry. Angels singing. The sound of coins hitting a counter multiplied by infinity. For the first time, Demo realized he'd completely misjudged me. This wasn't some broke lord scraping by in a frozen wasteland. He'd attended fancy noble parties before. He'd seen earls' sons throw money around. But none of them had ever dropped several hundred gold coins without even blinking. I could practically see myself growing taller in his eyes. By the time the transaction was done, I was pretty sure Demo would have followed me into battle if I asked. Turns out the goblins really do worship gold above all else. The proof was standing right in front of me. Demo went from polite professional to would literally call me daddy. The instant I said, "I'll take everything," my skeletons dragged out a heavy wooden chest from the cabin. I popped the lid, and inside were rows of neatly stacked dark gold coins stamped with skull patterns. I picked one up, flipped it between my fingers, and looked at Demo. "By the way, I don't have standard gold coins." "Undead gold coins, okay?" His eyes went so wide I thought they'd roll out of his head. He bowed even deeper. "Of course. The great undead lord should use undead coins. It suits your magnificent status." While he was hunched over counting coins and making happy little clinking sounds, I casually asked him about how money worked on this continent. The little guy was so high on the thrill of a big sale that he spilled everything without even realizing he was giving away free intelligence. Here's how it breaks down. Every faction mints their own coins, but the quality varies wildly. Goblin-issued coins are the universal standard, backed by their massive trade network spanning every major power. Highest gold content, best craftsmanship. The dollar of this world, basically. 3 other currencies trade at equal value. Undead coins with skull markings, elven coins with leaf patterns, and dwarven coins with bearded portraits. All 3 match the goblin standard in weight and purity, just different artwork. Everything else gets discounted. Orc coins are crude garbage, 3 of them to buy 1 standard coin. Lizard folk, gray dwarf, and fairy coins trade at 2 to 1. Vampire coins are actually well made, but vampires are considered traitors to the undead faction, so nobody wants to be seen using their money in bulk. The really interesting ones are temple coins and magic coins. Temple coins, stamped with crowns, are the exclusive currency for the Church of Light. Healing potions, holy water, blessings, that kind of thing. Magic coins with crystal patterns work the same way at mage towers for buying potions, scrolls, and enchantments. These special coins trade at 1 to 2. You need 2 standard gold coins just to get one of theirs. The Church and the Mage Council accept normal gold for big institutional deals, but individual customers buying small quantities gotta use their special coins. No exceptions. Every faction on the continent hates this system, but since nobody can replace what healers and mages provide, they all swallow their pride and pay up. I snorted. So basically, they bully small buyers and play nice with anyone strong enough to push back. Demo froze mid-count. He slowly raised his head and stared at me with this bizarre expression, half shock, half reverence. "My dear, great undead lord, every word you speak drips with the philosophy of gold." He paused, completely serious. "Are you sure you're not a goblin wearing human skin?" I burst out laughing. Coming from a goblin, that wasn't an insult. That was the highest compliment their species could give. Like being called comrade by a Russian and handed a bottle of vodka. Instant brotherhood. I counted out 445 undead gold coins and handed them over. Demo's hands were literally trembling as he verified each one and swept them into a spatial pouch. His tiny green eyes were glowing like he'd found religion. Transaction complete. I had my ash stones, blueprints, skill scroll, and equipment. Demo had his gold and was vibrating with the need to rush home and count his money 3 more times. He spun around toward the teleport gate, practically skipping, and I caught his wrist. "Oh Lord, is there something else you need?" He snapped back into servant mode instantly, bowing so low his nose nearly touched his knees. "When does the next shipment arrive?" This mattered more than anything. I'd basically emptied my gold reserves on this one purchase, and I needed to know how fast I could resupply. But I didn't regret spending a single coin. Gold sitting in a chest doesn't keep you alive. Gold converted into weapons, materials, and power does. There were plenty of ways to earn more, trading with native factions, raiding monster lairs, or eventually taking it from others. Because I hadn't forgotten the math. 6 days until the first Lord's trial. 6 days until my protective barrier vanishes completely. When that shield drops, the full fury of polar cold will slam into my territory with nothing to stop it. If I haven't built up enough by then, I either die in the trial or freeze into a very permanent ice sculpture. Other lords were still leisurely chopping trees and picking berries. I didn't have that luxury. My countdown was carved into my bones. "Dear Lord, you are Demo's most respected patron." The goblin's face was a war between ecstasy and heartbreak. But sadly, the next trade won't be for another 7 days. 7 days. 7. The Lord trial happens in 6. By day 7 I could already be a frozen popsicle or a pile of soul fragments. The polar nights here are colder than anything the monsters could do to me. Can't you come earlier? Trade association rules, my lord. The supply cycle is tied to territory level. For a village-tier settlement like yours, once a week is the maximum. He looked genuinely apologetic, but firm. Goblin corporate policy apparently doesn't bend. Can I at least request specific items for next time? Demo hesitated. That's a privilege reserved for higher-tier territories. Once your spending reaches a certain threshold and your territory grows larger, the association will gift you an upgraded market blueprint. Then you can request items and teleport directly to our commercial capital. His eyes went dreamy. The Goblin capital is the most magnificent city on the continent. Every major faction has shops there. Rare materials, forbidden magic, legendary weapons, everything you could imagine. One day, you'll have a seat at that table. Sweet sales pitch, buddy. But I need stuff now, not in some glorious future. I pressed him further and confirmed the bad news. Not only could I not request specific goods, I couldn't even do large-scale bulk orders for basic materials. The big factions had deliberately set up barriers to keep small players from accessing the real trade networks. Classic gatekeeping. But then Demo bit his lip and leaned in. Of course, if you tell me what you need in advance, I can try to include more of those items in next week's shipment. Unofficially, bending the rules for a big spender. Now that was the goblin spirit I could work with. I need undead faction building blueprints, ash stones, death gems, and soul crystals. As many as you can get. I paused for dramatic effect. Money is not a problem. Total lie. I was basically broke after that 445 coin shopping spree. But a good bluff is worth more than a full wallet, and Demo didn't need to know my bank balance. His eyes lit up like lanterns. Rest assured, my lord. Everything you've requested will appear on the next trade list. He practically floated into the teleport gate, clutching his money pouch like a newborn child. I'm pretty sure he was going to sleep hugging those coins tonight. The moment he vanished, I got to work. Learned the corrosive poison fog skill from the scroll, another green tier spell added to my necromancer toolkit. Then I opened the public chat channel. It was the middle of the night, but these lords were internet creatures in their previous lives. Sleep was optional. The chat was still on fire. The situation had gotten worse for most people. Farmers' loyalty was cratering everywhere. A few lords had managed to list small amounts of food on the trading platform, but their prices were even more ridiculous than mine. Some lunatic was charging 100 units of materials per food unit. Price gouging on day 1. I'd created a generation of imitators. 2 lords were literally cursing each other's entire family trees over meat prices in the regional chat. Classy. I smiled. I could see where this was heading. Right now food was king, but it wouldn't last. Give it another day, and the surviving lords would stabilize their food supply through hunting and foraging. The golden age of expensive fish was ending, which meant tonight was my last big harvest. I listed everything. Every scrap of meat, every chunk of fat, every edible organ. Didn't keep a single unit for myself. I had a frozen ocean full of fish right next door. I could restock anytime. 28,653 units of food hit the market. Same prices as before. 50 wood, 50 stone, or 50 grass per unit. Iron and copper at slightly better rates. Soul crystals accepted at 1-to-1. Then I built a second workbench and mass-produced stone axes and wooden spears around the clock. 50,000 of each, listed at reduced prices to undercut the competition that was starting to pop up. Other lords had started selling basic tools, but I could outproduce them all day long. Volume beats margin when you're cornering a market. I kept the soul crystal exchange option on everything. Most lords wouldn't trade crystals. They needed them for recruiting farmers, and farmers meant survival. But there's always someone desperate enough to make a bad trade, and every crystal I collected was one more Tier 7 skeleton soldier I could recruit. I added one last line to my trade listings. PM me for high-price purchases of blueprints and rare resources, and my lord's tome practically exploded with notifications. I slapped the thing shut. I was done. 1 full day and night, without a single minute of sleep. My brain was turning to mush. I collapsed onto my bed, now covered with thick bear pelts from today's hunt, and the warmth swallowed me whole. I was unconscious before my head finished hitting the pillow. Any longer, and I'd have been joining the undead faction for real. 6 hours later, the alarm on my lord's tome dragged me back to life. 8 in the morning. Full energy restored. No time to waste. Every second before the trial counts. The public chat was still going strong. These people genuinely never sleep. They were still talking about me. Apparently listing 30,000 units of food plus weapons in one night left quite an impression on the neighborhood. Over 100,000 friend requests and private messages overnight. I ignored most of them. Outside my cabin, the skeletons were doing what skeletons do best, working without complaint. They were sorting the endless stream of traded materials flowing into the warehouse. Mountains of wood, stone, grass, and 900 units of iron ore. Now that caught my attention. I checked the trade log. Over 400 of those iron units came from a single buyer. Xia Yulan. Pretty name. Her profile picture showed a young woman about my age with a clean, innocent smile. Looked like the type who'd never hurt a fly. But her purchase history told a completely different story. She barely bought any food. Instead, she'd snatched up 40 stone axes and 40 wooden spears in one shot. I tapped my finger on the table. Interesting. While every other lord was panic buying food, this girl was stockpiling tools and weapons. Either she already had food handled and was thinking 2 steps ahead, or she'd figured out what most people hadn't. That weapons would be the real currency once the food crisis passed. She wasn't the sweet little innocent her photo suggested. Her friend request was sitting in my inbox. I accepted. The reply came instantly. She'd been waiting all night. Wow, you actually accepted. I've been refreshing since yesterday. I skipped the small talk. Why do you have so much iron ore? My territory is on top of an open pit mine. Not much else around, but stone and iron? Practically unlimited. I stared at that message and felt a stab of pure jealousy. I got dropped on a frozen death sheet where even the rocks are hiding. This girl steps outside her shack and trips over iron ore. Life isn't fair. I didn't ask where her territory was. That would be rude and pointless. The fact that she volunteered information about her iron supply already showed a level of trust. Looks like you've also upgraded to a level 3 cabin. I deduced that from the 40 tools she bought. Nobody stockpiles that many during early development unless they're scaling up construction after a territory upgrade. Also, so you're already at level 3 too? Did you get a reward for upgrading? Not every upgrade gives rewards, I said. Enough chit-chat. I got to the point. I need more iron. She was direct right back. Sure, but I don't need food or tools anymore. What else can you offer? I sent her the item description for the black iron sword, green quality, made from iron ore and wood on a basic workbench. I had the blueprint and the means to mass produce them. With enough iron, I could arm my entire skeleton army with green weapons. With a little extra investment through my enhancement system, I could even push them to blue. She was clearly tempted. Blueprint or finished product? I have the blueprint, but I'll sell you the finished swords below market price. Payment in iron ore. Silence for a moment. She was thinking hard. Her situation wasn't as rosy as it sounded. Sitting on a mountain of iron ore was like a child carrying gold through a dark alley. If other lords discovered her mine, she'd have a target on her back the size of the moon. She needed weapons, badly, both for the upcoming Lord trial and to defend against anyone who came sniffing around. When she replied, the bubbly girl act was completely gone. Her voice, well, her text, was ice cold and calculating. 5 iron ore per sword, so the cute act was an act. She'd been playing dumb to fish for a better deal. Clever girl. I shut that down immediately. No chance. Green weapons aren't like food. They don't spoil and they don't lose value. When every lord starts building armies, these swords will sell themselves. I'm not desperate. And I meant it. Even in native faction markets, a black iron sword sold for 10 gold coins, which translated to roughly 10 units of iron ore. And her raw or might not even fetch that price on the open market. The market price for this sword among native factions is 10 gold coins, I told her. That's about 10 iron ore equivalent. And honestly, your unprocessed or probably trades below that. I'm not trying to trick you. Any lord developing as fast as you will eventually make contact with native powers and find this out for themselves. Xia Yulan hesitated for a few seconds, then bit the bullet. What price can you give me? She'd picked up on the key detail. I was already trading with native factions. If she kept playing it safe and isolating herself, she'd get left behind when the real competition started. Guarantee me 400 iron ore per day, and I'll give you the swords at 8 iron each. One condition, you don't resell my swords on the public market. Deal. I've got the iron right now. That was instant. No haggling, no drama. She could clearly tell I wasn't trying to scam her. The no resale clause was just basic market protection. An 8 iron per green quality sword was way better than she'd expected. What surprised me was how casually she promised 400 units daily. Combined with the 400 she'd already traded last night, this girl was sitting on a mine that could spit out 800 iron a day without breaking a sweat. I'd underestimated how loaded she was. Not my problem, though. More iron for me. I opened the crafting panel and pulled up the black iron sword blueprint. 2 iron ore and 1 wood per sword. I set the quantity to 500 and hit craft. The workbench started clanking away, spitting out row after row of dark-bladed swords. Slower than white quality items, so I built a few more workbenches to keep up the pace. The finished swords were green quality. Tier 2 damage, no special traits. Nothing fancy, but miles ahead of stone axes and wooden spears. For arming my skeleton army, this was a massive upgrade. I sent 50 swords to Xia Yulan through a direct trade. 400 iron ore appeared in my warehouse. Straight back into the next production cycle. You're generous, big guy. I like doing business with people who don't nickel and dime. She was clearly happy with the quality. Fair enough. These swords were legitimately good for this stage of development. Before closing the chat, I typed one more thing. Free advice. If you've got spare manpower, slow down on mining and clear out the monsters around your territory. Treasure chests drop blueprints and rare resources. That's the only real shortcut to fast development. Thanks. Seriously, I could tell her opinion of me had shifted. Sure, I charged premium prices, but I didn't cheat people, and I gave useful advice on the side. What she didn't realize was that my advice was entirely selfish. The faster she developed, the more iron she could dig up for me. The wool comes from the sheep, as they say. Quick wash, cold breakfast, deep breath. Time to build an army. I burned through my fully recharged mana pool multiple times, summoning skeletons with every bone I had. By the time I was done, my undead horde had swelled to 600. Between food sales, weapon sales, and monster drops, I'd also collected over 100 soul crystals. Combined with yesterday's leftovers, I had enough for a serious recruitment push at the grave mound. I walked up to the orange tier building and opened recruitment. 7 crystals and 7 bones per tier 7 skeleton soldier. I set the number to 27 and drained every last crystal I had. Reckless? Absolutely. But I was staring down a double death clock, the Lord trial in 5 days, and the protective barrier vanishing right after, unleashing the full polar cold on my territory. Every other Lord was frantically expanding their military too. I just happened to be better at it. 27 elite tier 7 skeletons clawed their way out of the graves, shaking off dirt and standing at attention. Cold blue soul fire flickered in their empty eye sockets. Combined with the 5 from yesterday, I now had 32 of these killing machines. Next, weapons upgrade. I pulled every black iron sword I wasn't saving for Xia Yulan's trades and fed them into the enhancement system. Blue light rippled across each blade as they jumped from green to blue quality. Tier 3 damage now. No special traits though. Not a single one. And that taught me something important about my system. Enhancement can only boost what's already there. It can't create effects from nothing. A plain white sword enhanced all the way to God tier would just be a really, really sharp plain sword. No special abilities, no passive effects, no elemental damage. It would technically have God tier numbers, but lose to any real legendary weapon that came with actual skills attached. The sweet spot for enhancement was the first upgrade. Going from white to green or green to blue gave you the biggest bang for your buck. After that, the returns dropped off a cliff. Dumping points into pushing a mediocre sword to purple would be a colossal waste when it still couldn't match a naturally dropped purple weapon like my evil moon. Good to know. Work smarter, not harder. I cranked out 600-round wooden shields next, enhanced them all to green quality. Tier 2 defense. Cheap, effective, good enough for daily combat. Then came the fun part, organizing my army. I set aside 100 skeletons as a supply core and living bombs for bone explosion. The rest got fully kitted out, blue-black iron swords in their right hands, green wooden shields in their left. I stood back and looked at my formation. Hundreds of armed skeletons standing in perfect rows, blue soul fire burning in every skull, weapons glinting in the pale Arctic light. Beautiful. I marched them south. First target, the nearest and smallest polar gray orc camp marked on my map. Around 200 orcs total, including elderly, women, and children. The weakest settlement in the area. Nearest was relative on this frozen hellscape. We trudged through howling wind and biting snow for over an hour before I finally spotted the half-dome ice huts dotting the white landscape ahead. I smiled. Found you. The moment I spotted the orc camp, their lookout spotted me right back. A deep, ugly horn blast ripped through the silence, and orcs started pouring out of their ice huts like angry green-gray ants, grabbing weapons and stumbling over each other. These were gray orcs, the bottom rung of the northern orc empire. Gray skin, hunched backs, round bellies. Honestly, if you squinted, they looked more like oversized goblins than the fearsome warriors you'd imagine when someone says, orc. Their weapons were a joke too, mostly sharpened animal leg bones and a few rusty short knives. No formation, no discipline, just a messy blob of ugly. Still, even dumb orcs can count. Sort of. They couldn't calculate the exact ratio, but they could see my skeleton army stretched way wider than their own group. And since my skeletons weren't charging, they didn't charge either. Savage doesn't mean suicidal. After a tense standoff, the crowd parted, and an elderly orc hobbled forward leaning on a bone cane. He had face paint in every color of the rainbow, bright feathers tucked behind his ears, and eyes that actually had some intelligence behind them, a rarity in this camp. I remembered something Dimo the goblin had told me during our trade. The easiest way to tell an orc's rank is by their accessories. More decorations equals higher status. Apparently, this nugget of wisdom came from a famous elven scholar, who was actually just a barely literate elven general who got fired for drunkenly hitting on his commander's wife. The entire elven empire used him as a cautionary tale. Dimo had laughed himself sick telling that story, then used it as an excuse to trash-talk elves, claiming that if a guy who couldn't count past 10 qualified as an elven scholar, then every goblin alive deserved a doctorate since they could do basic arithmetic in 1 minute. Sometimes, I'd seen Dimo's arithmetic firsthand. During our trade, he'd squatted on the ground with a stick doing long division over a few coins for 5 minutes straight. Peak goblin performance. Anyway, the decorated old orc was clearly the chief. My system tagged him as Brook, Tier 6, Class, Orc Shaman. A quick scan of the rest showed mostly Tier 3 or below. No heroes, no real threats. With me being a green rank necromancer backed by this army, there was zero chance of losing a fight here. Human, Brook's raspy voice echoed across the snow. State your reason for entering the Grayskin camp. If you come with sincerity and friendship, we shall receive you as guests. If you come with malice, our weapons will shatter every bone you own. Bold words for a camp full of Tier 3s holding sharpened femurs. I'm a lord from the north, I said calmly. I've come to propose a trade. Brook's eyes narrowed to slits. ULI. Beyond this point is the dead zone. Nothing survives up there except ice bears and sea beasts. No orc, and certainly no human, could live in that frozen hell. I kept my expression neutral. My territory is indeed further north. But that's not particularly important right now. I'm a necromancer who practices in these frozen lands. I believe we can reach a mutually beneficial deal. Of course, if you'd rather not. I can always take my business south to Blackstone City instead. Dropping Blackstone City's name was deliberate. It was the biggest settlement near the polar region, 100,000 orcs and gray dwarves, over 10,000 soldiers, and the largest trading hub in the north. Their city lord was known for fair dealing and military strength. Every northern chieftain traded there. As for calling myself a necromancer rather than an undead faction lord, that was a necessary disguise. Necromancy is just a profession in this world, practiced by plenty of living mages. The undead faction, on the other hand, is universally hated by every living race. Walking up to an orc camp and announcing, "Hi, I'm literally undead," would be like painting a bullseye on my forehead. Brooks studied my skeleton army for a long moment, then spoke carefully. "What sincerity have you brought?" Translation, "Show me what you've got, and I'll decide whether to trade with you or try to eat you." I waved my hand. One of my skeletons stepped forward carrying a green-quality round wooden shield, polished smooth, reinforced with bone pins and animal sinew along the edges. Quality craftsmanship that was obvious at a glance. Brooke took the shield in his rough hands, ran his palms across the surface, pressed hard with his knuckles, sniffed the wood grain. Then he called over the biggest warrior in camp and grunted, "Hit it." The warrior raised a rusty battle axe, wound up his whole body, and slammed it down on the shield with everything he had. Clang! Wood chips flew. The shield rocked. But when the dust settled, there was only a shallow scratch on the surface, not even close to breaking through. That shield could take several more hits like that and still hold. Brooks stared at the scratch mark. I could see his mind working. On a battlefield, a shield like that was the difference between living and dying. Old Brooks' eyes lit up like a predator spotting wounded prey. White quality equipment. Round wooden shields. How many do you have? His voice dropped low, barely containing his greed. This isn't white quality, I corrected him calmly. It's green. Crafted using my family's ancestral techniques. You just saw for yourself how tough it is. Liar. Brooks' face twisted ugly. This is an ordinary wooden shield. Old Brooks' eyes don't deceive him. One beast tooth coin, at most. One beast tooth coin. That's less than a third of what even the cheapest white quality gear sells for on the open market. This greedy old fossil was trying to rob me with words before resorting to weapons. That's the price in any orc tribe. He puffed out his chest, chin raised high, absolutely convinced he had me cornered. Behind his back, his fingers were making hidden signals to someone in the shadows. I saw that. My expression went cold. It seems you have zero interest in an honest trade. Trade? Brooks sneered, his face turning savage. I think you have no interest in orc friendship. A whistling sound cut through the air, an arrow flying straight at my heart from a hidden archer. They'd planned this ambush from the start. They took one look at my skeleton army and assumed they were dealing with flimsy bone puppets they could sweep aside. Before I could even react, one of my skeleton soldiers threw himself in front of me. The arrow slammed into his shield with a sharp clang, driving him back half a step, but it held. Not a scratch on me. My eyes went ice cold. Attack. My voice was quiet. The killing intent behind it was not. The skeleton army surged forward as one. I raised my hand and unleashed corrosive poison fog. A wave of purple-gray toxic mist erupted across the orc formation like a tidal wave. The stench hit them before the pain did. Then came the screaming. The old shaman tried to cast some kind of war totem to buff his warriors. But the moment the fog touched his skin, searing agony shot through his body and his magic shattered mid-cast. It's a mage. That one word, mage, did more damage than the fog itself. Orcs are tough, thick-skinned, hard to kill in melee. But their magic resistance is basically zero. In orc tribal legends, human mages rank alongside actual demons as the most terrifying things in existence. Pure, bone-deep terror ripped through the camp. Their formation, if you could even call it that, collapsed instantly. I sent 10 unarmed skeletons charging into the chaos and detonated them. Bone explosion. 10 simultaneous blasts. The concussion was deafening. Bone shrapnel tore through the crowd, blood and screaming everywhere. My head went hollow from burning through that much mana at once. Face pale, knees buckling, vision going gray at the edges. I grabbed onto my skeleton guards and let them drag me backward away from the fighting before I collapsed. It didn't matter. The battle was already over in everything but name. The orcs' morale had shattered completely. Warriors who'd been ready to fight were now tripping over each other, trying to flee into the snow. And fleeing enemies versus undead soldiers who feel no fear, no mercy, and no fatigue. That's not a battle. That's a harvest. My 32 elite Tier 7 skeletons led the charge with their blue-quality swords, carving through crude leather armor like it was wet paper. The whole thing was less a fight and more a one-sided slaughter. When the dust settled, I'd lost fewer than 50 regular skeletons. The entire orc camp, wiped out. Old Brook lay face down in a pool of blood, eyes wide open, dead but still looking surprised. He went to his grave never understanding how flimsy bone puppets had torn his people apart. I waited for the poison fog to fully dissipate before walking back onto the battlefield. The fog was powerful, no question, but it didn't discriminate between friend and foe, and it wrecked the bodies of anything it touched. Living allies would have been in serious trouble, and mangled corpses were harder to work with. I need to save this skill for emergencies only. Clean up. Sort everything by category. I sat down cross-legged and started meditating to recover my drained mana while my skeletons worked. The loot pile they assembled was impressive: 296 soul crystals, 321 animal hides, 8,750 units of frozen meat, 286 orc weapons, 785 beast tooth gold coins, 5 crates of fresh fruit, 10 bags of salt, several hundred units of stone and wood. Looking at this haul, everything suddenly made sense. No wonder Brooke tried to ambush me despite being outnumbered. These orcs were absolutely destitute. No proper maps, no blueprints, no crafting knowledge. Their gold reserves were pitiful. They were desperate, starving outcasts who'd been banished to the Arctic and saw my army as a gamble worth taking. Barefoot people who had nothing to lose picking a fight with someone wearing shoes. There were also 200 orc corpses on the field. As an undead lord, bodies are a resource, bones for summoning, potential soul crystal drops. But the Lord's Tome didn't have a butchering option for intelligent beings. Fair enough. Even orcs who ate humans didn't get that courtesy in reverse. Still, stacking 200 corpses with frozen death grimaces in my backyard and summoning skeletons while they stared at me? My stomach could handle a lot of things, but that mental image was a bridge too far. I pushed down the discomfort and walked into the largest tent at the center of camp, the old shaman's quarters. The moment I stepped inside, my Lord's Tome chimed. Capturable building detected. Orc camp, level 3. Capture or demolish. A level 3 settlement from just 200 orcs? Not bad. I chose capture. Out here in the middle of nowhere, an extra outpost meant an extra pair of eyes, an emergency fallback position, and a forward base for future expansion. Every advantage counts when you're building an empire from nothing. I stood in the middle of the wrecked orc camp staring at 2 treasure chests, and my heart was pounding out of my chest. One was a silver chest, pure white with a faint silver glow, awarded for conquering an enemy settlement for the first time. The other was a bronze chest found during the camp cleanup. 2 boxes gleaming side by side in the dim Arctic light. Kill and plunder, the ancient formula for getting rich. The old saying was right all along. In a world like this, the only way to grow is to swing the blade, take what's there, and snowball it into something bigger. I rubbed my hands together, activated Destiny's guidance, and went for the bronze chest first. Save the good stuff for last. Gotta have that ceremony. Purple light burst out. 1% probability, 100% guaranteed. Music to my eyes. I got Magic Wellspring Blueprint in purple, Bone Burial Ground Blueprint in blue, Light Crossbow Blueprint in green, Iron Pickaxe Blueprint in white, 20 soul crystals, and 198 undead gold coins. The Magic Wellspring sounded amazing until I read the material requirements. Stone, wood, stone bricks, planks, rope, all manageable. But then at the end, 5 natural gems and 1 magic essence. I didn't even know where those things existed, let alone how to get them. Every lord on the continent was hoarding rare materials like their lives depended on it, because they literally did. People would rather chew tree bark than trade away stuff like that. Shelved for later. I'd originally hoped to trade with these orcs for rare resources, but they'd chosen violence over commerce. Never even gave me a chance to negotiate. They wanted to ambush me, so I was forced, absolutely forced, I tell you, to wipe them out and confiscate everything they owned. Tragic, really. But then I looked at the Bone Burial Ground blueprint, and my disappointment evaporated. 800 stone, 500 wood, 150 rope, all stuff I had. The building description made my brain light up. It automatically separates collected corpses into bones and flesh, prevents decay, and permanently preserves everything. This wasn't just a storage building. This was the single most important facility an undead lord could own. Bones were the raw material for my entire skeleton army. Until now, any corpses I collected would start rotting, forcing me to rush through meditation cycles and burn mana summoning skeletons before the materials went bad. With this building, I could stockpile bodies indefinitely and summon at my own pace. Worth more than 10 purple weapons. Now for the main event. I touched the silver chest. Gold light exploded outward so bright I had to squint. The treasure aura was several times stronger than the bronze chest. Gold tier drop confirmed. I got Radiant Amulet in orange, Archer's Graveyard Blueprint in purple, Class Advancement Scroll in blue, Iron Axe Blueprint in green, Cart Blueprint in white, 100 soul crystals, 20 ash stones, and 659 undead gold coins. I grabbed the class advancement scroll first, used it immediately on my necromancer class. The moment it activated, my mind cleared like fog lifting off a lake. It felt like all my battle fatigue vanished, but I knew that was an illusion. What actually happened was my mana capacity had multiplied several times over now that I'd advanced to a blue rank necromancer. The old ceiling felt like a puddle compared to this new ocean. Even better, I noticed my skeleton summoning skill had independently upgraded to blue quality from all the constant use. The advancement scroll only unlocked the class upgrade. The skill had leveled up on its own through sheer practice. So transmigrators could grow stronger not just through loot, but through genuine training and repetition. Good to know. Skeleton summoning was my bread and butter, the skill that built my entire army from nothing. Having it at blue rank meant better, more efficient summons going forward. Then I picked up the Radiant Amulet and nearly choked on my own breath. Orange tier accessory. For skills, Magic Shield that automatically blocks attacks with Tier 4 defense, Magic Recovery. Boosting mana regeneration by 50%, Hostility Detection that alerts me to anyone with killing intent within 5 meters, and Purification that auto-cleanses negative status effects and resists mental magic. In this world, accessories of the same tier are far more valuable than weapons. They're small, easy to hide, and they save your life when everything goes wrong. If I'd been wearing this during the fight, that sneak attack arrow wouldn't have gotten within a meter of me. I pressed the amulet against my chest, right over my heart. The cool metal against my skin felt like a promise. If I had the enhancement points, I'd have upgraded this thing to God tier on the spot. As a mage, squishy by definition, this amulet was the difference between dies to 1 ambush and good luck killing me. Finally, I pulled out the humble white tier cart blueprint. 10 wood each. I cranked out 50 of them on the spot. Nothing glamorous, but with all the loot from this battle plus the orc corpses for my new bone burial ground, I was going to need a lot of hauling capacity for the trip home. I turned into a locust. There's no other way to describe it. That furnace, take it. The carpet, take it. Those bone tools in the corner, take them. Not a single item stays behind. My skeletons stripped that camp cleaner than a buffet table at a college dorm. I personally dismantled the old shaman's massive hide tent, rolled it into a bundle, and threw it on a cart. Every scrap of beast leather, every crude bone weapon, every piece of junk the orcs owned, loaded up. Even their ugly bone clubs could be traded to other lords for basic wood and stone. Pennies add up. The camp itself wasn't worth much without its inhabitants, but I kept it as a forward outpost. An undead outpost doesn't need luxuries. It needs strategic position. And in the frozen north, where getting lost means getting dead, having a waypoint between my territory and the outside world was invaluable. I marched my skeleton army home with dozens of carts groaning under the weight of loot. Sent the elite skeletons back out to keep clearing monsters while I sat down for lunch. First real break all day. I'd barely set out my food when my lord's tome lit up. A message from Dong Fu, the wolf guy. Honestly, I'd written him off as dead. A full day of silence in this world usually meant someone had become monster food. Boss, I've got a new blueprint. Iron arrow, green quality. My eyes sharpened instantly. I'd just gotten a light crossbow blueprint from the bronze chest, but couldn't use it without arrows. Iron arrows would complete the set and give my forces ranged capability for the first time. That was a game-changing upgrade. What do you want for it? I replied. All my available weapons are listed on the trading platform. The going rate for a green blueprint was about 20 white quality weapons. Standard, fair, everyone knew it. But Dong Fu wasn't playing standard. Let's not dance around it. You have iron weapons, don't you? I need iron weapons, smart kid. He'd clearly thought it through. I just wiped out an entire orc camp. Anyone with half a brain could figure out that stone axes don't cut through orc hide. I obviously had better gear stashed away. I wasn't going to deny it. I'd been planning to list iron weapons on the market soon anyway. 3 black iron swords, green quality. That's my limit. I wasn't about to hand out my blue enhanced weapons. Too early to reveal that card. Plus, blue gear cost over 1,000 units of basic materials to produce when you factor in enhancement costs. My wallet would weep. Dong Fu checked the sword stats and his silence told me everything. Tier 2 sharpness on a proper iron blade. Compared to what he'd been fighting wolves with, this was like upgrading from a butter knife to a katana. His situation was rough. He'd barely survived killing 1 wolf, lost most of his farmers in the process, and only just scraped together enough resources to upgrade his shack to level 2. He was hanging on by a thread. After a pause, he came back swinging. 5 swords. And I'll throw in a natural gem on top of the iron arrow blueprint. Natural gem. My brain nearly short-circuited. That was one of the core materials for the magic wellspring, the purple tier building I'd just gotten from the bronze chest. I'd been wondering where on this entire continent I'd find natural gems, and this half-dead wolf fighter just casually offered me one. Deal. List the trade. No hesitation. Not even a microsecond. 5 green swords for a blueprint and a gem that could unlock a purple building? I'd have paid 10. The trade completed instantly. 5 black iron swords vanished from my inventory. In return, I got the iron arrow blueprint and a dove egg-sized green gemstone that glowed with a faint natural energy. Cool to the touch, beautifully translucent. On Earth, this would have been a museum-quality emerald. Here, it was crafting material. What a world. 1 gem down, 4 to go for the magic wellspring. Mind telling me where you found that gem? I asked carefully. I'm not asking for your location, just curious how you got it. Nothing secret about it. Found it in a wolf's den when I tracked one back to its cave. That told me everything I needed. Dongfu's territory was in a forest region. Natural gems were probably an elven faction resource, born from environments rich with life energy. Forests would be the prime source. Most people would hear that story and think, cool, wolf cave loot. I heard it and saw a long-term supply chain. If you find more of those, bring them all to me. I won't just trade swords. I've got other good stuff too. I sent Dongfu the stats for my green quality shields, crossbows, and leather armor. You want someone to hunt treasure for you? Show them the menu first. He replied in about 2 seconds flat. 5 shields. I've got another natural gem. I'll cover the rest with resources. Another gem? Sold. Done. No haggling needed. That trade netted me a second natural gem plus 500 units of wood. And it confirmed what I'd suspected. Dongfu's territory was next to a forest. The guy was practically swimming in lumber. I flipped open the public channel to see what everyone else was up to. After 2 days of struggling, some lords had finally started listing food on the market. Great, right? Except their prices were insane. One genius was charging 100 units of basic materials for a single piece of food. That was even worse than my day 1 prices, and I'd been openly gouging people. The difference? When I did it, I was the only seller in a famine. These clowns were trying it when half the lords had already figured out hunting. They were going to learn a painful lesson about supply and demand. I grinned and listed my own food at 10 units per piece. 10. Down from 50. The channel went dead silent for exactly 1 heartbeat. Then it detonated. Where's that idiot who was charging 100? Didn't he say don't like it, don't buy it? Jiang Chun just showed up to shut him down. He dropped the price this much? I just bought food at the high price. I'm ruined. Jiang Chun, you're deliberately disrupting market order. Market order? You were the one selling at the highest price 5 minutes ago, and now you care about the market? Jiang Chun is a legend. The price gougers were screaming, but their voices disappeared under the tidal wave of grateful lords. Their tiny food supplies at ridiculous prices looked pathetic next to my mountain of affordable meat. The irony was delicious. 2 days ago, I was the villain selling overpriced fish to desperate people. Now, with a bunch of even greedier sellers as my backdrop, I looked like a saint. Same guy, different context. Perception is everything. My food evaporated off the market at light speed. Even lords who already had some food were panic buying to stockpile, thinking they'd resell it later when prices bounced back. They wouldn't. Once people taste cheap food, they'll never accept expensive food again. They'd rather starve and wait for my next listing than pay some random lord 10 times the price. I'd just permanently anchored the market. Anyone who tried to gouge after this would get laughed off the platform. That's behavioral economics. I can be a ruthless businessman, but I absolutely cannot tolerate other people being ruthless businessmen, especially when they're trying to rob my customer base. Sometimes a little goodwill goes a long way. Even just a handful of people defending you in chat is worth more than a few extra resources per trade. I closed the noisy channel and got to work at the crafting benches. Built several extra workbenches to speed things up, then mass-produced everything. 5,000 wooden spears, 5,000 round shields, 200 iron axes, 200 iron pickaxes, Spears and shields listed at 10 units of basic materials each, or 1 soul crystal. About a 5 times profit margin. Not greedy. Volume over margin right now. Iron tools were different. Iron ore was scarce, so I only accepted iron in trade. 5 units per tool. Fair price considering iron tools made gathering resources dramatically faster. Everybody wins. White tier blueprints would eventually be common as dirt. No point squeezing people over basic gear and making enemies I didn't need. Then I brought out the real bait. Green quality black iron swords. 100 of them, offered in exchange for white blueprints, rare resources, or 30 soul crystals each. Plus a premium tier. 10 swords available at 2 for 1 green blueprint. I also dumped the captured orc weapons and the old bone blades my skeletons had retired from, priced in iron and copper. The green swords weren't about making money. They were fishing hooks. After Dong Fu casually pulled 2 natural gems out of his pocket, I was convinced tons of lords out there were sitting on random rare materials they'd found in treasure chests or monster dens. They didn't know what the stuff was for, so they were just hoarding it. But a green quality iron sword? That was power they could use right now. Real, tangible. I can kill the thing trying to eat me. Power. Weapons are like insurance. You might not need it today, but you absolutely cannot afford to not have it. People would crack. They'd trade their mysterious shiny rocks for sharp pointy metal. And those mysterious rocks would end up exactly where they belonged, in my hands, fueling buildings and upgrades these lords couldn't even imagine yet. When my listings hit the public channel, the entire platform lost its mind. What? I'm still killing things with a stone axe, and this guy has green weapons, blueprints, and rare resources for a trade. Isn't that expensive? Too expensive? There's wooden spears right there. They work fine. Just poking things isn't very satisfying. Iron, or for white weapons? Kind of steep. You can skip it. Wait 5 days until the Lord trial. Get your teeth knocked out by monsters, and then tell me if it was worth it. So, what exactly counts as a rare resource? Jiangchen honey, I have a cute voice. Can you give a girl some free green swords? I'll definitely repay you in person. That's a sweaty dude. Confirmed. Stop pretending. Would you take my grandfather's gold watch for a green sword? The world announcement hit like a bomb. 3 times, naturally, because the system loves drama. Congratulations to Lord Jiangchen for being the first to conquer an enemy settlement of 100 inhabitants. Reward, silver treasure chest ×1. The chat went absolutely feral. Him again? Does this guy have cheat codes? I'm still fighting rabbits, and he's wiping out ORC camps. He definitely got god-tier loot from those bronze chests. No other explanation. Can someone please sell some food? My farmers are looking at me weird. Somewhere on a barren hill, Xia Yulan was mid-battle with a wild boar when the announcement flashed across her screen. I could practically hear her teeth grinding from here. Does this guy even understand the concept of pacing? And somewhere in a forest, Dong Fu was strutting home with a dead wolf on his back, feeling like the king of the world, until my name popped up 3 times in a row. Apparently, he threw a fit. Why is it always him? Those silver chests should be mine. Poor guy genuinely believed he was the main character of this story. Meanwhile, on the trading platform, an interesting pattern was forming. All the white-quality weapons and basic gear were getting snapped up at lightning speed. But my black iron swords? Not a single buyer. Too expensive for most people right now. I wasn't worried. Not even a little bit. I was the only lord in this entire region with green-quality weapons. Complete monopoly. Even if someone got lucky and opened a green blueprint from a wooden chest. So what? I could produce blue-quality gear whenever I wanted. By the time the masses caught up to green, I'd already be selling blue. By the time they reached blue, I'd be at purple. The ladder keeps going up, and I'm always 2 rungs ahead. No wonder every capitalist in history loved monopolies. This feeling was intoxicating. I walked to the edge of my territory and pulled up the bone burial ground blueprint. 800 stone, 500 wood, 150 rope. Built it right behind my cabin, diagonal from the grave mound. What appeared was a giant circular pit in the ground. Just a deep hole surrounded by a crude stone railing. Looked like someone had started digging a swimming pool and given up halfway through. Not exactly majestic, but appearances are deceiving. I ordered my skeletons to dump all the orc corpses into the pit. The sandy floor inside started churning like a living thing, slowly swallowing body after body. On my lord's tome panel, 2 new resource bars appeared, bones and flesh. This changed everything. Before this, I had to physically carry bones around like some kind of skeletal Santa Claus just to summon my troops in the field. Now I could access bone resources directly through my Lord's tome from anywhere. Clean, convenient, and, most importantly, no one would see me hauling a wagon full of corpses around and immediately think, evil undead Lord, kill on sight. But the burial ground wasn't just bone storage. The undead faction has way more depth than people think. Beyond basic skeleton fodder, there are zombies, slower but packed with flesh and raw power, and ghouls, rotting over time but devastatingly strong in combat. Both require flesh as a recruitment resource, and both absolutely demolish regular skeletons in a fight. This is why the undead are a top-tier faction on this continent despite everyone hating them. The skeleton army is just the opening act. I watched the decomposition speed for a minute and frowned. Even at blue quality, this thing processed corpses painfully slowly. A normal undead lord would solve this by building multiple burial grounds. But I'm not normal. I converted a huge chunk of my stockpiled resources into enhancement points and slammed 2 consecutive upgrades into the burial ground. The crude pit transformed instantly. Deeper, darker, the stone railings now carved with intricate patterns, the whole structure radiating an aura that felt completely different from before. The upgraded bone burial ground was now orange quality, and the difference was terrifying. It could fully dissolve an orc corpse every 10 seconds. What used to take forever now ran like a meat processing factory on fast forward. Beautiful. I pulled up my best building blueprint. The Purple Tier Archer's Graveyard. 5,000 stone, 3,000 wood, 500 rope, and 30 ash stones. I'd scraped together those ash stones through blood, sweat, and goblin transactions. Originally, I was saving them for the ash tower, but that building still needed iron and copper ingots I didn't have. Better to invest in combat power now. Out here in the frozen north, the blizzards themselves were my defense system. Fancy towers could wait. I hit build, and rejection. My lord's cabin was only level 4. Purple buildings required level 5. Blocked. I blinked. So the cabin wasn't just a glorified barracks. It was the foundation stone of my entire territory. Its level capped what I could build. That was annoying. But then I glanced at my orange tier grave mound and orange tier bone burial ground and smiled. My enhancement system had let me upgrade existing buildings past the cabin's level restriction. I couldn't build purple from scratch, but I could enhance blue buildings all the way to orange without anyone complaining. That wasn't bending the rules, that was snapping them over my knee. Still, I needed to upgrade the cabin fast, which meant stone bricks, which meant finding a real trade partner among the native factions. The transmigrated lords were practically tapped out. Whatever rare resources they stumbled across, they clutched like newborns clutching a blanket. To access higher-tier materials, I needed to reach Blackstone City and plug into the continent's actual economy. That plan was still forming in my head when I felt something wrong. Deep in my consciousness, the soul fires of my patrol skeletons started winking out. One after another. Fast, way too fast. These were fully equipped Tier 2 skeletons with green weapons and shields, and something was shredding through them like tissue paper. A whole squad gone in under 30 seconds. Something dangerous had just appeared near my territory. No hesitation. I marched to the grave mound and burned every soul crystal I had. 60 Tier 7 elite skeletons clawed their way out of the earth. I armed them all with blue swords and green shields, then sent a recall order to every skeleton in the field. Full defensive formation. Whatever this thing was, it was not staying in my backyard. Minutes later, I was marching at the center of nearly 1,000 skeletons, rounding a large ice formation behind my territory. And then I saw it. Not a monster den. A castle. An enormous, ancient fortress buried under layers of ice and snow. The walls were crumbling. The whole structure looked abandoned and dead, but I knew better. My skeletons had been annihilated at a rate of 1 per second right outside those gates. The scattered bone fragments of my patrol squad were still lying at the entrance. Their weapons and shields? Untouched. Whatever killed them either couldn't use equipment or didn't care about loot. That meant low intelligence, but high combat power. This place was too close to my territory to ignore. I couldn't sleep knowing some unknown horror was squatting behind the next ice hill. Spread out. Surround formation. My army fanned into a wide crescent around the fortress, layers of skeletons between me and whatever was inside. I advanced slowly, step by step, toward the frozen gates. Then the doors burst open and they poured out. Giant black spiders. Dozens of them, each one massive, with 8 legs that gleamed like polished blades. Tier 5 creatures from the underground world. At least 20 of them, maybe more, flooding out of the castle in a chittering wave. No wonder my patrol got wiped. A squad of Tier 2 skeletons against Tier 5 spider monsters was a death sentence. Front ranks, forward. Bone explosion. The first wave of expendable skeletons charged in and detonated on contact. Bone shrapnel sprayed everywhere like shrapnel grenades, and even mindless spiders flinched at having their faces peppered with bone fragments. Their charge faltered for just a moment. All units, attack. I raised both hands and unleashed corrosive poison fog across the spider horde, while my main force crashed into them from all sides. Having the radiant amulet meant I didn't have to worry about my own fog hurting me anymore. I could finally go all out without restraint. But then, the fog did basically nothing. The purple mist washed over the spiders, and they barely reacted. Of course, these things were venomous creatures. They had natural poison resistance. My poison magic against poison-immune spiders. Classic. Fine. Plan B. I switched to mana missiles, firing invisible projectiles at the spiders from range to support my skeleton melee fighters. My first shot sailed over a skeleton's head by about 2 inches. My second shot nearly took out one of my own soldiers. My third shot actually hit a spider. Progress. My aim was genuinely embarrassing. I made a solemn vow right there on the battlefield. Once this crisis was over, I was going to practice my magic accuracy until I could thread a needle at 50 meters. A necromancer who can't aim his own spells is just a guy in a robe watching his army fight. The territory could always grow bigger. But if I personally stayed weak and sloppy, all the buildings in the world wouldn't save me. The spider fight was fast and ugly. Those black wolf spiders hit way harder than the orcs. One sweep of their blade-like legs could shatter a skeleton into bone confetti. But I had numbers. Overwhelming, stupid, beautiful numbers. Plus 60 Tier 7 elites who actually knew how to fight. My elites dodged the leg sweeps, hacked off spider limbs with their blue swords, and finished them off with brutal efficiency. Final cost. About 100 regular skeletons turned to powder and several Tier 7 elites destroyed. Painful losses. For any normal lord, this would have been a catastrophe. For me it was an acceptable invoice. Keep pushing. Kill everything inside. My cannon fodder skeletons flooded into the castle first. Nothing. No resistance at all. Apparently that first wave of spiders was the entire garrison. Either this fortress was understaffed, or the spiders were terrible at military planning. Probably both. We swept the first floor and found a bronze chest tucked in a corner, plus a pile of useful junk. 8 beast fang stones, 68 soul crystals, 21 rusty iron swords, and 34 rusty suits of armor. There were also old human skeletons scattered across the floor, bones smooth and intact, no bite marks. Whatever killed the original inhabitants, it wasn't the spiders. They were later tenants who moved into an already empty building. 1 floor down, already profitable. I was feeling good. Then we went upstairs. The smell hit me before I even reached the 2nd floor. Thick, rancid, like someone had left raw meat in a sauna for a month. Every surface, walls, ceiling, floor, was plastered with spider webs. And in the corners, nestled in shadows, were dozens of spider eggs the size of wash basins, glowing a sickly green. My skin crawled. Literally crawled. Destroy every single egg. Don't miss one. I was not going to get ambushed from behind by a swarm of freshly hatched baby nightmares while exploring deeper into this place. My skeleton stabbed through the bloated eggs one by one, thick green fluid splattering everywhere. I stayed at the edge of the corridor with 10 elite guards forming a tight ring around me. We'd smashed about half the eggs when an ear-splitting shriek tore through the castle. The walls trembled. The ice cracked. Something very angry had just noticed we were murdering its children. A spider roughly twice the size of the others smashed through a door at the end of the hallway. 8 crimson eyes burned with pure killing fury. The thing was so massive it barely fit in the corridor. Shadow Spider Queen. Tier 10. Skills. Venomous Web Spit. Death Charge. Spider Brood Spawning. My stomach dropped. This thing was a full tier above anything I'd ever fought. It towered over my 7-tier elites, and at tier 10, it was one step away from being classified as a hero-level entity. Honestly, it was probably scarier than most heroes. Heroes at least have the decency to be human-sized. No time for careful planning. I burned 100,000 enhancement points on the spot, force upgrading Evil Moon from purple to orange quality in the hands of my nearest elite skeleton. Go? Kill her. My skeletons charged without an ounce of fear, because they physically couldn't feel any. The Spider Queen's front legs swept through the corridor like battering rams, and the first dozen skeletons exploded into bone fragments on contact. My heart bled watching those numbers evaporate. But the corridor worked against both of us. She could only face attacks from one direction, but I could only attack from one direction too. No surrounding her. Just wave after wave of skeletons feeding into a meat grinder. But meat grinders eventually jam. Skeleton after skeleton piled onto her legs, weighing her down, slowing her movements. She crushed them, but more replaced them instantly. When 2 of my elites managed to latch onto her front leg, I made the hardest call of the battle. Bone explosion on my own elite soldiers. The blast was devastating. Elite tier skeletons packed way more power into their self-destruct than regular ones. The Spider Queen's leg was blown open, gushing dark blood, cracked nearly to the joint. My Evil Moon carrier saw the opening. He launched himself at the wound and brought the orange tier blade down with everything he had. The difference between purple and orange weapons became crystal clear in that single swing. The blade carved through that armored leg like it was made of wet clay. The entire limb separated from the body, and the queen lurched sideways, screaming. But she got in one last hit. Her remaining leg whipped around and caught my swordsman dead center. His tier 7 body snapped clean in half at the waist. The upper half kept crawling forward, still trying to fight. Undead loyalty is something else. You. Pick up Evil Moon. Get in there. Another elite grabbed the fallen sword and dove back into the chaos. The queen was crippled now, down one leg and hemorrhaging from the explosion wound. My skeletons swarmed her from every angle. When the second front leg came off, she collapsed completely, shrieking in agony as hundreds of bone soldiers climbed over her body and hacked at everything they could reach. By the time they were done, the Shadow Spider Queen was less a corpse and more a stain. I walked over once I confirmed 0 life signs remaining. The butcher's bill was steep. Nearly 200 regular skeletons. 6 tier 7 elites. All for one boss monster in a hallway. That was the power of a tier 10 creature. A walking war crime on 8 legs. If I'd fought her in an open field where she could maneuver freely, the losses would have been 3 times worse. The narrow corridor was the only reason this was even winnable. Clean up the rest. My surviving skeletons finished off the remaining eggs while I caught my breath. The queen had actually done some of the work for us. In her berserk charge, she'd trampled a good chunk of her own offspring. Mother of the Year, that one. The second floor's loot was significantly better than the first. This had been the real nest, the core of the spider colony. Whatever treasures were hidden up here, they'd been marinating in Spider Queen territory for who knows how long. The second floor loot was juicy. 29 Beast Fong stones, 64 soul crystals, and 6 death gems. Death gems. Those things were rarer than ash stones and essential for high-tier undead construction. Finding 6 of them in a spider nest was like discovering diamonds in your couch cushions. There was also a key labeled Office Key. No corresponding chest on this floor, which meant whatever it unlocked was behind a locked door somewhere. My skeletons found it at the end of the hallway, a perfectly intact metal door, completely untouched. The spiders either didn't care about locked doors or couldn't figure out how keys worked. Probably both. Not the sharpest legs in the drawer, those ones. I activated my Radiant Amulet's shield just in case, slid the key in, turned it, then immediately backed way up and sent a skeleton through first. No traps, no ambush. Safe. I walked to the doorway and the first thing I saw was another skeleton. I waved my guards forward, shields raised, ready for a fight. The threat turned out to be a regular dead person sitting in a chair. One poke from my skeleton, and the corpse crumbled into a pile of dusty bones on the floor. Just some poor soul who died at his desk, who knows how many centuries ago. Occupational hazard, I suppose. The moment I stepped inside, warm air hit my face like a hug. After days of constant freezing, The sensation was so unexpected I almost moaned out loud. The walls were lined with fist-sized yellow crystals radiating gentle, steady heat, sunstones. Special building materials that doubled as heaters and light sources. In a place like the frozen north, these things were worth their weight in gold. I touched one, warm but not hot, like a perfect hand warmer that never ran out of battery. I could have stood there fondling rocks for an hour. The office itself was impressive. A heavy wooden desk, a tall back chair, and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves covering 3 walls, packed with books. Despite what had to be centuries of neglect, every book was perfectly preserved. No mold, no insects, no damage. The sunstones must have kept the environment stable all this time. These books were worth more to me than any weapon or treasure. I knew absolutely nothing about this world, its geography, its factions, its history, its rules. Every other lord was equally blind, stumbling through survival with zero context. This library was a cheat sheet for an exam everyone else was taking unprepared. Move all these books back to base. Carefully. If a single page gets damaged, I'll use your bones for fishing bait. I turned to another group. And pry every sunstone off these walls. Take them all. I am a locust and I am not sorry. While my skeletons worked, I sat down in the dead man's chair, still comfortable after all these years, solid craftsmanship, and ignored the silver chest sitting in the corner. On the desk sat a long ornamental box and a worn leather journal. Those interested me far more than any random loot drop. I opened the journal. The text automatically translated itself into something I could read, handy perk of being a transmigrator. The first few pages were written in strong, confident handwriting. It told the story of a man named Clenard, or rather, the last patriarch of the Clenard family. In the 23rd year of Emperor Wilson's reign, he'd led his family survivors to the far north, chasing an old family legend about a mysterious golden arm bone and some kind of puppet that could restore their house to glory. He'd always dismissed it as a fairy tale, but desperation has a way of making fairy tales look like instruction manuals. His family had been framed, falsely accused of conspiring with the Abyss, when in reality it was the Church of Light that had been messing with forbidden powers. The Church pointed the finger at the Clenards to cover their own tracks, and the Emperor, who almost certainly knew the truth, let it happen anyway. Generations of loyal military service to the crown, ancestors who bled and died in the founding wars, all thrown away like garbage. They fled north with the Emperor's death squads on their heels, sold their ancestral purple tier armor just to buy winter supplies from the orcs in Blackstone City. The Church seized every property and asset the family owned back in civilized lands. By winter, they were trapped. The pursuers had reached the northern border. Supplies were running low. They built this castle, pouring the family's last resources into it, while desperately searching the frozen wastes for the legendary arm bone. They found nothing. Month after month, the journal entries grew more desperate. The handwriting deteriorated from confident strokes to shaky, barely legible scrawls. Spring came, but the blizzards didn't stop. Search parties sent out for food never returned. The family lost faith in the legend entirely. I sat in that dead man's chair, reading his final words, and felt something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a story. This was a real person's last record of watching everything he loved crumble to nothing in the coldest place on the continent. The journal wasn't finished yet. I kept reading. The journal's final entries were grim. We're trapped in this castle. The men have started rioting. And from the depths of the blizzard, undead are emerging from beneath the earth. God of courage, why have you abandoned your faithful? I've locked myself in the study. The end is near. If any descendant of Clenard finds this journal, forget the legend. Forget everything. Save yourself. Don't repeat our mistakes. That was it. The last line trailed off into a smear of ink. The old man probably died mid-sentence, his quill dragging one final streak across the page before he slumped forward and became the skeleton I'd just knocked off the chair. I closed the journal and sat quietly for a moment. The Clenard family story was a tragedy from start to finish. A loyal noble house, falsely accused of conspiring with the Abyss, when it was actually the Church of Light dabbling in forbidden powers. The Church needed a scapegoat, the Emperor needed plausible deniability, and the Clenards drew the short straw. Generations of military service, ancestors who bled in the founding wars, None of it mattered when the powerful needed someone to blame. Did I feel sorry for them? Sure. But sympathy doesn't change reality. In any world, being a convenient sacrifice is just what happens when you're useful enough to frame, but not powerful enough to fight back. What I did care about was the intelligence buried in these pages. The first half of the journal gave me a crash course on this world's human civilization, the Holy Alliance, the power structure between nations, the relationship between the Church of Light and the various kingdoms. Things I'd been completely blind about until now. More importantly, the journal confirmed that Blackstone City actively traded with humans and other races. That meant I could walk in there and do business without getting my head chopped off. Even if decades or centuries had passed since these words were written, a city built on trade doesn't turn away customers with money. The warnings about extreme blizzards near my territory location were also critical. If storms that bad could trap and kill an entire noble family with resources, I needed to prepare serious weather defenses before my protection barrier dropped. And that line about undead emerging from the blizzard? If the old patriarch wasn't hallucinating in his final hours, that meant there was an existing undead faction lurking somewhere beneath the frozen north. An unknown neighbor I'd had no idea about. That could be an opportunity or a death sentence, depending on how I played it. I filed away every piece of information, then opened the ornamental box on the desk. Inside, resting on dark red velvet, was a section of a right arm bone. Not regular bone. It had a metallic golden sheen, somewhere between jade and gold, ancient and mysterious. The moment my fingers touched it, my system went wild. Congratulations. Obtain Puppeteer's Clue, 1/3. Collect all 3 clues for a chance to recruit a gold tier hero. My brain nearly exploded. The Clennard family legend was real. This arm bone was genuinely connected to a gold rank hero, and I now had 1/3 of the puzzle. Gold tier heroes sat just below demigods in the power hierarchy, one step below half-divine beings. The kind of existence that made emperors and churches think twice before picking a fight. No wonder the Clennards were destroyed. If they'd actually found this hero and awakened it, neither the emperor nor the church could have touched them. The powerful don't fear the innocent. They fear the potentially powerful. The Clennards were eliminated not for what they'd done, but for what they might become. And now that potential was sitting in my hands instead. Also in the box was a ring. Dark gold alloy, exquisitely crafted, with a roaring golden wolf head carved on the face, the Clennard family crest. Every strand of the wolf's mane was detailed, every fong razor-sharp. This wasn't jewelry. This was a symbol of noble authority. A spatial storage ring. Blue quality, 10 cubic meters of internal space. The Clennard family heirloom, passed down exclusively to each generation's patriarch. Honestly, for a count-level noble family's greatest treasure, blue quality was kind of pathetic. Told me everything I needed to know about where the Clennards actually ranked in the grand scheme of things. Mid-tier at best, punching above their weight class in a game they were never meant to win. The ring's storage was empty too. Of course, they'd sold everything they had just to survive the winter. I burned enhancement points on the spot. Blue to purple, storage jumped to 100 cubic meters. Purple to orange, 1,000 cubic meters. Now that was a proper spatial ring. I slid it onto my left middle finger. Cool metal against skin, and suddenly I could sense this vast, empty pocket dimension connected to my consciousness. Instant access to 1,000 cubic meters of invisible storage. No more hauling cartloads of supplies around like a medieval delivery service. But the ring wasn't just about convenience. According to the journal, the Clennard bloodline was completely extinct. No heirs, no descendants, no one left to claim the family name. Which meant a perfectly good noble identity was just sitting here, unclaimed, in a castle at the edge of the world where nobody would ever check. A transmigrator wandering the continent as a random nobody with a skeleton army? Suspicious. Dangerous. Easy target. A young lord of the ancient and noble house Clennard, traveling with his undead retinue? That was a man with a pedigree, a family crest, a spatial ring bearing the wolf sigil, and a perfectly reasonable backstory for anyone who asked. I looked at the golden wolf snarling on my finger and smiled. Hello, Count Clennard. Nice to meet me. From today onward, the name Clennard belongs to me. I looked down at the pile of bones on the floor, the last patriarch, the man who wrote that journal, who died alone at his desk waiting for a miracle that never came. Borrowing a dead man's name felt like it deserved at least a small gesture of respect. Dig a grave outside. Give him a proper burial. My skeleton soldiers didn't understand why. They don't understand anything. But they obeyed, scooped up the old bones, and carried them out to be laid to rest in the frozen earth. It was the least I could do for the man whose identity I was about to steal. With the body handled, I scanned the emptying office one last time. My gaze dropped to the floor and locked onto the smooth, perfectly cut stone bricks beneath my feet. Stone bricks. The exact material I needed to upgrade my lord's cabin to the next level. I looked at the floor. I looked at the walls. I looked at the ceiling. This entire castle was made of stone bricks. Strip this place down to the foundation. Every brick, every beam, every nail. Dismantle the whole castle and haul everything back to base. The Clennard family built this fortress with the last of their resources, their final desperate act of defiance against a cruel world. And I was going to take it apart piece by piece and use the materials to upgrade my shack. Sorry, ancestor. Your sacrifice will not be in vain. It'll be repurposed. What I didn't know at the time was that one of the orcs from the camp I'd wiped out had escaped. The old shaman's son, apparently. While I was busy reading journals and looting castles, this survivor had sprinted all the way to Blackstone City and thrown himself at the feet of the city's ruler, a half-orc hero named York. York was a purple rank, tier 6 hero, a half-blood who'd clawed his way to the top through raw power and iron-fisted leadership, building Blackstone City from nothing into a genuine trading hub of 10,000 residents with over 2,000 real soldiers. In a frozen wasteland full of exiled criminals, feral beasts, and gray dwarves with grudges, keeping a city stable for decades was no small achievement. The timing couldn't have been worse for this poor orc survivor. York was already dealing with a political nightmare. The Human Holy Alliance and the Orc Federation had gone to war, and both sides were trying to drag Blackstone City into the conflict. The Orc Federation's messenger had basically shown up and demanded York send his entire army to the front lines as cannon fodder. Your orcs, come die for the motherland. Real inspiring stuff. The Holy Alliance was smoother about it, all smiles and respect, calling York esteemed lord, and offering vague promises of rewards if he'd betray the Orc Federation by attacking their rear camps. York had been alive for over 60 years. He knew exactly what would happen. He'd attack the orcs. The humans would immediately pull back their own forces, and Blackstone City would be left alone to face the full wrath of the Orc Federation. Classic backstab setup. Saying yes to either side was suicide. Staying neutral meant eventually getting crushed by both. York was trapped between a rock and a hard place with a headache the size of a glacier. And into this mess stumbles a crying orc begging for revenge because a human necromancer with thousands of undead soldiers attacked our camp and killed everyone. York's first reaction was pure skepticism. A human? In the frozen north? Commanding an undead army large enough to wipe out an entire orc tribe? He'd lived here for decades and never heard of such a thing. The survivor was probably exaggerating out of panic. What York didn't know, what nobody in Blackstone City knew, was that the human necromancer was currently 2 miles north of their awareness, methodically dismantling a castle brick by brick, wearing a dead nobleman's ring, and planning to walk into their city within the week to do some shopping. Meanwhile, in Blackstone City, old York was dealing with the orc survivor who'd escaped my camp raid. The idiot threw himself on the floor, crying about revenge, but, in his panic, he accidentally let slip the truth that his tribe had tried to ambush me first, luring me in under the pretense of trade before attacking. York caught it instantly. You're trying to teach me how to handle my business. The orc's back was instantly drenched in cold sweat. He shut up real fast. York dismissed him with a warning. One more stunt like this, and he wouldn't walk out alive. The old half-orc might look frail, but he'd built Blackstone City by personally cutting down every bandit and monster that stood in his way. That kind of reputation doesn't fade with age. Still, York filed the information away. A human necromancer with a large undead army suddenly appearing in the frozen north? That was a new variable he couldn't ignore. I, of course, had no idea any of this was happening. I was too busy counting stone bricks. That castle the Clennard family built? The floors, the walls, the staircases, stone bricks everywhere. The exact material I needed for my cabin upgrade. The moment I hit 100 bricks, I grabbed my elite squad and sprinted back to base. The rest of the skeleton army stayed behind with orders to keep dismantling. That fortress was built with a noble family's entire fortune. The materials inside were far more than just basic stone. Some of it was high-quality construction material on par with the sunstones. Every beam, every tile, every fitting was coming home with me. Waste nothing. Back at base, I pulled up the upgrade panel. Level 3 to level 4. 3,000 wood, 5,000 stone, for 100 rope, 100 stone bricks. All present and accounted for. Upgrade. A 10-minute timer appeared. Twice as long as the last upgrade. The pattern was clear. Each level would take longer than the previous one. I'd need to factor that into future planning. While waiting, I fed the spider corpses into the bone burial ground. The spider meat was toxic and completely inedible. Couldn't even sell it on the market. What a waste of perfectly good giant monster carcasses. At least their bones and flesh could fuel my undead recruitment pipeline. Then I turned to the 2 treasure chests I'd been saving. 1 bronze from the castle's first floor, 1 silver from the Spider Queen's office. I rubbed my hands together and activated Destiny's guidance. Bronze first, as always. Save the best for last. Purple light. Guaranteed, as usual. I got Pale Staff in purple, Leather Workshop blueprint in blue, Iron Shield blueprint in green, Wooden Cup blueprint in white, 20 soul crystals, and 269 undead gold coins. The staff grabbed my attention immediately. A beautiful weapon with a faint blue-green glow, smooth to the touch, radiating gentle magical energy the moment I wrapped my fingers around it. 3 effects. Magic penetration boosting spell damage by 20%, extended casting increasing spell range by 10%, and mana surge improving mana recovery by 20%. No faction restrictions, no elemental requirements. A pure all-purpose caster weapon. Not undead specialized, which would have been ideal, but the stats were rock solid. This was exactly what a blue-rank necromancer needed to stop being embarrassingly weak in personal combat. I checked the trading platform while I was at it. Sales had cooled down from yesterday's frenzy. All the basic weapons sold out, but nobody had touched the green-quality swords I'd listed for rare resources. Not surprising, we were only on day 3. Most lords still felt safe behind their protective barriers. But as the trial deadline crept closer, anxiety would spike, and suddenly everyone would be desperate for real weapons. Patience. The market would come to me. For now, I had something more important to do. I converted a pile of basic materials into enhancement points and poured everything into the staff. For my own equipment, I never held back. A powerful weapon at the right moment could be the difference between life and death. Purple to orange. 1 upgrade. The pale staff transformed. Magic penetration jumped to 30%. Extended casting soared to 50%. Mana surge hit 50%. Combined with my Radiant Amulet's 50% mana recovery bonus, my total mana regeneration was now doubled, a full 100% faster than baseline. That meant I could summon twice as many skeletons per day as before. My army's growth rate just went through the roof. The only bottleneck left was raw materials. Bones, flesh, soul crystals. I needed a constant, massive supply to keep feeding the machine. But with an upgraded cabin coming online, a bone burial ground churning through corpses, and a trading empire that was only getting started, the pipeline was already in place. I twirled the glowing orange staff in my hand and smiled. Not bad for day 3. Next up, the Leather Workshop blueprint from the bronze chest. 500 stone, 500 wood, for 100 rope, 200 iron. I'd had a leather armor blueprint sitting uselessly in my inventory for a while now, and I'd been wondering why I couldn't just slap some animal hides together and call it armor. Turns out leather needs to be professionally processed first. You can't just wrap yourself in raw bear skin and call it equipment. Well, you can, but the system won't recognize it. I built the workshop at the far edge of my territory, as far from everything else as possible. Leather processing involves chemicals and stinks like absolute death. I was already living in a graveyard full of skeletons. I didn't need my headquarters smelling like a tannery on top of that. Industrial zoning. Even undead lords need it. 20 skeletons went straight into the production line. The workshop could process 10 leather per hour at blue quality. Way too slow. I burned points and upgraded it to purple, now 100 per hour. 10 times faster. I considered pushing to orange, but held back. My hide stockpile was limited, mostly from hunted animals and looted orc supplies. At this rate, I'd chew through everything by tomorrow morning anyway. No point upgrading a factory that has nothing to process. This is where skeletons truly shine as workers. A leather workshop runs 24 hours a day when your labor force doesn't eat, sleep, or complain about working conditions. Zero overtime pay. Zero union negotiations. Peak efficiency. I filed away the iron shield and wooden cup blueprints for later, counted up my soul crystals and gold coins, and felt a small pang of disappointment. After all these chest openings, I still hadn't pulled any rare gemstones. My luck with specific materials was frustratingly average despite Destiny's guidance, guaranteeing max tier drops every time. Then I picked up the silver chest. Gold light. Shooting straight up like a pillar of fire. The most intense glow I'd seen from any chest so far. I got an orange hero summoning scroll, moon shadow mage robe in purple, spatial teleportation scroll in blue, iron spear blueprint in green, 20 ash stones, 50 soul crystals, and 548 undead gold coins. Everything else blurred out of existence. My eyes locked onto that scroll like a guided missile. An orange hero summoning scroll. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack one. I'd just read the Clenard Patriarch's journal. The old man spent his entire life searching for a gold-tier hero to save his family. He died in a frozen castle having never found it. And here I was, 3 days into my journey, holding an orange-tier hero scroll that had literally fallen out of a box. Orange heroes were just one step below gold. One step below the beings that made emperors think twice. The kind of power that entire kingdoms would wage wars to recruit. Use it. I ripped the scroll open before the thought even finished forming. Golden flames erupted from the paper, tearing open a spatial gate in front of me. Through the shimmering portal, a small, delicate silhouette slowly materialized. The flames died. The gate closed. And standing before me was a girl. A young girl, maybe in her mid-teens, small and slender. Cute face, porcelain white skin that had an odd glazed sheen to it, like polished ceramic rather than living flesh. Her eyes were beautiful but strangely hollow, watching me with quiet, doll-like stillness. My lord's tome displayed her full profile, and I nearly swallowed my own tongue. Siska, autonomous puppet. Orange tier, rank 4. Class, alchemist. Race traits, undying construct, puppet, artificial soul. Skills, alchemy at gold rank, fire magic at purple rank. Combat proficiency, intermediate. She wasn't human. She wasn't even alive in the traditional sense. She was an alchemical construct, an artificial puppet created by some mysterious witch, originally deemed a failed experiment. But through sheer cosmic accident, she developed something that shouldn't exist. A real, independent, artificial soul. Emotions, free will, loyalty metrics, the whole package. The witch had kept her as an alchemy assistant for over 100 years, during which Siska learned everything her creator knew. When the witch eventually vanished, Siska sealed herself away in a laboratory and went to sleep, waiting for someone to wake her up. And her alchemy skill was gold rank. Not orange, not purple, gold. Master-level knowledge of the entire alchemical discipline. That meant potions, enchantments, material refinement, magical item creation. The full spectrum of the most versatile crafting class in existence. Oh, and she came with a free orange-tier alchemy laboratory blueprint, just casually bundled in like a bonus accessory. I stared at this tiny doll girl standing quietly in front of me and felt two very different emotions fighting for control. The first was pure, screaming joy. This wasn't just an orange hero. This was a walking, talking crafting engine that could single-handedly revolutionize my entire territory's production capacity. She was the kind of asset that established kingdoms would bankrupt themselves to acquire. The second was a cold chill running down my spine. Her background said she was a failed creation, a reject. And she was still orange tier with gold rank alchemy skills. What level was the witch who made her? If the failure was this powerful, what did a success look like? Were we talking demigod territory? Or something beyond even that? The kind of existence that the word, God, was invented to describe? I decided very firmly to stop thinking about that before my brain melted. Her loyalty was sitting at 65. Not terrible, but not great. She had free will, which meant she could refuse orders, get unhappy, or potentially leave if I treated her poorly. I looked at Siska. Siska looked at me. Two hollow doll eyes meeting two very excited human ones. Time to make a good first impression. Priority number 1. Do not anger the doll girl who could probably incinerate my entire territory if she sneezed wrong. Her loyalty was at 65. That's the "I'll work for you, but I might ghost you at any moment" zone. Not great. Not catastrophic. But definitely not the ride or die loyalty I needed from an orange tier hero who knew gold rank alchemy and high-level fire magic. She looked like a harmless teenager. Porcelain skin, doll-like features, quiet as a church mouse. But I wasn't stupid enough to judge power by appearance. This little girl had spent a century studying under a witch so powerful that even her failures came out at orange rank. If Siska decided she didn't like me, she wouldn't need an army. She'd just set everything I owned on fire and walk away. "Hello? Are you my master?" Her voice was clear, soft, almost emotionless, like a very polite wind-up toy that might or might not murder you. "Yes," I said, putting on my most dignified expression. "I'm the one who awakened you from your long slumber. Technically, the scroll did the heavy lifting, but hey, I'm the one who ripped it open. Credit where credit's due." Siska gave a small, precise bow. "Thank you, Necromancer. Puppet Siska is willing to serve you." Loyalty jumped to 75. Just like that. 10 points for basic courtesy. Okay, she wasn't completely unreasonable. My lord's cabin finished upgrading right on cue. Perfect timing. "Let me show you around the territory," I offered warmly. She followed in silence. I gave her the tour, keeping my tone friendly and open. "If you need anything, just say the word." The territory is still in early development, but having someone of your caliber here will accelerate things enormously. Her face remained completely blank. I genuinely couldn't tell if she was listening or silently judging everything she saw. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "If possible, I would like you to build me an alchemy laboratory. My living quarters, rest, and research all require one." My stomach sank. Unfortunately, at the territory's current level, I can't construct orange-tier buildings. Loyalty dropped to 70. Instantly. 5 points gone because I said, "Can't." "Wait. Hold on. Can we talk about this?" Who loses loyalty points over a construction delay? This was like adopting a cat. One wrong move, and she'd give me the cold shoulder for a week. Except this cat could shoot fireballs. "It's only temporary," I said quickly. "The territory will upgrade soon, and I'll have your lab built in no time." She stared at me with those hollow glass eyes. She did not believe a single word. And honestly, fair. Building an orange-tier structure normally requires a level 10 territory, which takes most lords 40 or 50 years to reach. But I wasn't most lords. Time to play my trump card. I walked over to my plain green quality warehouse and dumped a mountain of enhancement points into it. Green light blazed, purple fog swirled, and in 2 seconds flat, the warehouse jumped from green to purple quality. Storage capacity multiplied several times over. For the first time, something flickered in those doll eyes. Actual surprise. Strange. The main castle hasn't reached level 5. How can the building tier exceed the headquarters limit? I went all in. No more hiding. It's my special ability. I can bypass territory level restrictions and force upgrade any building directly. I walked her over to my orange tier grave mound and bone burial ground. See these? Both upgraded by me. If you can provide a simplified alchemy laboratory blueprint, I'll build it and upgrade it to orange immediately. Eventually, I can push it to gold tier. Maybe even higher. Loyalty shot up to 80. But instead of feeling relieved, a chill ran down my spine. Because the look in Siska's eyes had changed. And not in a, "Oh how wonderful, I'll get my lab," kind of way. No, this was the look of a scientist who had just discovered a brand new specimen. The kind of look that makes lab rats very, very nervous. "A simplified blueprint is not impossible," she said carefully. "It would just take some time." Good. Progress. I could breathe again. "Master, I have one more request." My gut clenched. "Go ahead. Once the laboratory is complete, may I conduct research on your body? Your special ability interests me greatly." "What kind of research exactly?" Her tone was as casual as if she were ordering lunch. "Perhaps removing an arm? Or extracting a kidney?" "I'm sorry, what?" "Absolutely not." Loyalty dropped to 75. She was using her loyalty score as emotional blackmail. I could see it. Every time I refused her something creepy, -5. Every time I gave in, +5. This puppet was playing me like a fiddle. But I was not losing body parts. That was a hill I would literally die on, preferably with all my organs still inside me. I could replace the removed parts with superior puppet prosthetics she offered, like that made it better. Much more functional than flesh. And oh, the disappointment in her eyes was genuinely unsettling. She looked like a kid who'd been told Christmas was canceled. I rubbed my temples and sighed. I needed her loyalty stable. I needed her to stay. But I also needed both my kidneys. Fine, you can have some blood samples. Hair too. But you are not allowed to cause any physical harm to my body. Not even a scratch. That is my bottom line, and it is an order. Loyalty bounced back to 80. She accepted the compromise with a tiny nod that somehow managed to convey both obedience and, I'll revisit this topic later. I'd figured her out by now. This artificial soul wasn't some naive puppet following simple commands. She was calculating, manipulative, and obsessively curious. Basically a mad scientist trapped in the body of a porcelain doll. The cute appearance was the most dangerous lie about her. But 80 loyalty was above the safety line. At least I could sleep without worrying about waking up on an operating table. Probably. I brought her back to the newly upgraded level 4 cabin, which now had a spare room. Temporary housing for my new alchemist roommate, who wanted to harvest my organs. The next upgrade required 5,000 wood, 10,000 stone, 900 rope, for 100 stone bricks, 150 roof tiles, and 100 leather. Nothing impossibly rare. Between my castle demolition project and a shopping trip to Blackstone City, I could gather everything. Blackstone City. Tomorrow. That was the plan. The spatial teleportation scroll from the silver chest gave me an escape card if things went sideways. And with Siska walking beside me, an orange-tier hero, even if she was more mad scientist than warrior princess, the orcs and dwarves in Blackstone City would think twice before trying anything stupid. I drained my mana summoning one last batch of skeletons for the night, collapsed onto my bear pelt bed, and fell asleep with one eye metaphorically open, just in case my new roommate got any ideas about non-invasive sampling while I was unconscious. Morning alarm. Eyes open. Heart attack. Siska was sitting in a chair right next to my bed, staring directly at my face. Same position as last night. Same blank expression. Same unblinking doll eyes. Zero breathing. Because she doesn't breathe. She'd been watching me sleep the entire night, like some kind of porcelain horror movie prop. Every hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. If I hadn't already gotten used to her particular brand of creepiness, I probably would have screamed loud enough to wake up the dead. Which, given my profession, would have been counterproductive. Siska, don't you need to rest? She tilted her head slightly. Master's question is strange. I am an autonomous puppet. I don't need rest. When I'm not working, that is rest, right? Different species, different logic. My mistake for applying human common sense to a century-old alchemical doll made by a possibly divine witch. How's the simplified alchemy lab blueprint coming along? Work completed, 32%. Estimated completion, 25 hours. When you simplify it, keep every single function intact. Only reduce the overall performance levels. I don't want a single feature removed. My enhancement system could boost raw power, but it couldn't create functions that didn't exist. A weakened lab I could fix. A gutted lab with missing features would stay gutted forever. Siska turned her porcelain face toward me and did nothing. No nod, no acknowledgement, no indication she'd heard a single word. I sighed and went to wash up. Cold water on my face. Cobwebs gone. Time to cook breakfast. I whipped up some flatbread and meat soup, simple frontier food, but hot and filling. Only one serving, since my roommate runs on magic instead of calories. I sat down at the table, took my first bite, opened the trading channel on my lord's tome, and something was watching me. Siska had materialized at the edge of the table. I didn't hear her walk over. I never hear her walk. She was just suddenly there, sitting perfectly still, staring at me, chewing with the intensity of a scientist observing bacterial cultures under a microscope. My appetite vanished by half. But do you want me to make you something too? Master is saying strange things again. Siska is just an ordinary autonomous puppet. I do not require food. Then why are you staring at me? A tiny pause. Siska is observing a very rare experimental. Master, she definitely almost said, experimental specimen. 100% she was about to call me a lab rat to my face. I could hear the word forming before she course-corrected at the last syllable. Whoever that witch was who built this puppet, she was absolutely insane, but undeniably brilliant. Siska wasn't a mindless machine following scripts. She was a fully sentient being with independent thought, emotions, curiosity, and a deeply concerning lack of ethical boundaries. That level of craftsmanship was terrifying. Siska feels that Master is thinking rude thoughts. That's your imagination, I said with a perfectly straight face. Day 4 in this world. The market had shifted dramatically. Food prices had crashed to about 5 basic resources per unit, exactly as I predicted. Some faster lords were starting to sell white-quality weapons, though in tiny quantities. My green-quality swords were still sitting unsold on the platform. Nobody wanted to pay premium prices yet. Soul crystals, on the other hand, were flying off the shelves. Everyone understood that more crystals meant stronger troops. But rare resources and blueprints? Not a single serious trade offer. I snorted. These people would rather wait until the Lord trial was breathing down their necks than panic buy everything at triple the price. Short-sighted as always. Their loss, my profit, eventually. After breakfast, I marched to the grave mound. Time to go big. I had 882 soul crystals saved up, enough for 126 Tier 7 elite skeleton soldiers. I set the number, activated Destiny's guidance, and pulled the trigger. The ground erupted. Over 100 pale bone arms punched through the earth simultaneously, clawing their way out of their graves in a wave of rattling bones and blue soul fire. 126 elite Tier 7 skeletons stood before me in perfect formation, dirt still clinging to their frames, eye sockets blazing. My elite skeleton count finally broke triple digits. Combined with the regular summoned skeletons, my army now exceeded 1,200 units. For a Day 4 Lord, that was absolutely absurd. No time to admire the view. I cranked out 400 leather armors from my freshly produced leather stockpile. Enhanced 200 of them to blue quality. Watching my precious points drain away hurt almost physically, but properly armored elites were worth every point. Blue leather armor went to the Tier 7 elites, green armor to the Tier 4 summoned soldiers. The skeleton army transformed instantly. What had been a mob of naked bone warriors was now a properly equipped military force, leather-clad and armed to the teeth. Then I addressed the weakness that nearly cost me dearly during the Spider Queen fight: no ranged units. I built 100 green-quality light crossbows and crafted 1,000 iron arrows. Enhanced every crossbow to blue quality, then distributed them to elite skeletons. Thanks to their innate combat proficiency, they could handle any weapon type. My elites were now dual-purpose, sword and shield up close, crossbow at range. With military upgrades handled, I switched to commerce mode. 5,000 iron ore and 2,500 would become 2,500 black iron swords. Another 5,000 would become 2,500 round shields. Listed 1,500 swords on the market accepting only iron, blueprints, and rare materials. Shields traded for wood. Done. Trading channel set to do not disturb. I turned around and, Siska was standing directly behind me, inches away, staring at my lord's tome with those empty glass eyes. I nearly threw the book across the room. Can you please make some noise when you walk? And stop appearing behind me like a ghost? She said nothing. Her loyalty score didn't move a single point. She'd heard me. She simply did not care. I needed to build that alchemy lab fast. Not for strategic reasons. Not for territorial development. For my mental health. If this puppet kept stealth stalking me around my own base, I was going to develop a permanent nervous twitch before the Lord trial even started. What are you looking at? I asked, steadying my nerves. Native inhabitants can't see or use the Lord's tome. That's an ironclad rule of this world. So she couldn't have been reading my screen. Master's special ability, Siska answered, blunt as a hammer. I wasn't about to explain transmigration and cheat systems to a puppet whose loyalty score bounced around like a rubber ball. Some secrets stay secret. Then she pointed one delicate finger at my lord's tome and said, with a stubbornness I was rapidly learning to dread, I want that. I stared at her. This isn't a toy. It's my personal item. Even if I gave it to you, you couldn't use it. I want it. She tilted her porcelain face upward with those big, empty doll eyes, radiating pure, I won't move until you say yes, energy. She was literally trying to cute her way into getting my most important possession, like a child demanding a toy at a store, except the child could set the store on fire. Next time I get the chance, I'll find you one. There would be enemy lords in the future. Kill one, take their lord's tome, hand it to Siska as a gift, earn some loyalty points. Easy. But my tome? Absolutely not. She'd have it disassembled and under a microscope within the hour. My skeletons finished loading the trade weapons onto carts for the Blackstone City trip. I had a firm rule: no enhanced equipment leaves my territory for sale. Not to native factions, not to other lords. I wasn't going to arm my own future enemies. The orc camp taught me that lesson loud and clear. I called Siska over to the cart and turned around just in time to catch her staring, not at me for once, but at the weapon in one of my elite skeleton's hands. Evil Moon. The orange tear curved blade with its dark red glow. I made a face. I would have understood if she wanted the pale staff. She had fire magic skills. A staff would boost her power. But a melee sword? Really? This girl just wanted everything she saw. Like a magpie with an alchemy degree. You want that? She nodded firmly. Eyes locked on mine. The message was crystal clear. We are not leaving until that sword is in my hands. I'd already turned her down once today with the Lord's tome. Refusing twice in a row would be pushing my luck with someone whose loyalty score was held together with tape and wishful thinking. I sighed from the deepest part of my soul. I hadn't recruited a genius alchemist. I'd adopted a tiny tyrant I couldn't fight and couldn't refuse. She looked fragile. Small frame, doll-like build, not exactly warrior material. But I knew better. Intermediate combat proficiency baked into her core, a body forged from magic and alchemy that could probably punch through a wall, and enough raw power as an orange-tier hero to flatten everything I owned if she felt like it. She wasn't delicate. She was a loaded gun shaped like a music box. Give Evil Moon to Siska. Take a black iron sword instead. My elite skeleton obeyed without hesitation, handing over the glowing orange blade and accepting a standard blue sword in return. Good soldier. Doesn't ask questions. Doesn't have a brain to ask them with. 1 loyalty point. 1. An orange-tier weapon, irreplaceable at my current stage, worth more than half my territory, bought me a single measly point of loyalty. But you know what? At least it went up and not down. I'd take it. Siska went completely quiet after that. She sat on the edge of the cart like a beautiful ice sculpture, cradling Evil Moon in her lap and examining it with eyes that kept flickering different colors. She wasn't admiring the weapon. She was analyzing it, scanning the molecular structure of an enhanced item, trying to figure out what my upgrade system had done to it. Of course, she didn't just want a shiny sword. She wanted a test subject. My skeleton army pulled the carts across the frozen wasteland at a relentless pace. No fatigue, no complaints, no breaks. Bone feet crunching through snow in perfect rhythm, hour after hour. The ultimate workforce. I sat in the center of the convoy, using my Lord's tome as a compass to keep us on course, while simultaneously meditating and summoning new skeletons during every moment of recovered mana. Not a single second wasted. In a death game with a countdown timer, idle time was borrowed from my own grave. 3 hours of marching later, Blackstone City appeared on the horizon, a dark, heavy silhouette against the gray sky. Rough, brutal architecture that screamed, orcs built this, and they were not going for aesthetics. The moment the city's lookout spotted us, chaos erupted on the walls. WZO, WLO, war horns blasted across the ice. The massive black stone gates slammed shut so fast I could hear the chains and gears screaming from half a mile away. The entire city went to battle stations in about 15 seconds flat. I couldn't really blame them. In every living creature's mind on this continent, the undead are walking apocalypses, death, decay, and destruction wrapped in bone. Our reputation made actual demons look like friendly neighbors. Seeing 1,000 skeletons marching toward your city like a white tide would make anyone soil their armor. I raised my hand and halted the army. Pushing closer would only make things worse. I took just Siska and 10 elite skeleton guards and walked forward alone. I straightened my moon shadow mage robe, the purple tier 1 from the silver chest, complete with spell penetration, magic amplification, meditation enhancement, and tier 3 magical defense. Combined with the radiant amulet's auto shield under my collar, I was wrapped in more protective magic than most castle walls. I looked like a proper mage lord approaching for diplomacy. not a desperate transmigrator who'd been eating raw fish in a shack 4 days ago. Funny how quickly things change. I stopped at a safe distance from the walls, pulled out a crude megaphone I'd cobbled together, and started shouting. My name is Jiang Chun Clenard, Lord from the far north. I come to Blackstone City not for war, but for friendship and trade. The wall erupted in noise. Armor clanking, voices arguing, weapons being readied. After a moment, a squat, barrel-chested gray dwarf poked his head over the battlements and bellowed back with lungs that could probably be heard 3 miles away. You're lying. The far north is a death zone. Nothing survives up there. And what about those skeletons behind you? You're clearly a lackey of the undead faction. I kept my expression calm. No anger, no rushing. This was a negotiation, not a fight. I am a descendant of the ancient Clenard family. My ancestors fled into the far north generations ago to escape persecution and established a hidden territory there. We've lived in isolation ever since. Thanks to the Clenard Library, I actually knew enough about this world now to sell the story convincingly. No more stumbling around blind. As for the undead, I'm a necromancer. These are my controlled servants, nothing more. The ice wastes are crawling with beasts and raiders. I bring them for self-defense. Admit I'm part of the actual undead faction? Not in this lifetime. Even if I someday command 1,000,000 skeletons, I'll always be an independent necromancer, never an undead lord. The distinction matters. A living necromancer controls his servants. An undead faction lord is the enemy. One gets trade deals. The other gets holy crusades. I raise my voice again. I've brought generous trade goods and seek only commerce. Surely Blackstone City, the mightiest fortress in the north, isn't afraid of 1,000 flimsy bone soldiers. The dwarf puffed up like an angry balloon. Of course not. Every citizen of Blackstone City is a fighter. Your pathetic skeletons couldn't scratch our walls. Wait here. I'll consult the city lord, smart dwarf. He knew this was above his pay grade. A human commanding over 1,000 undead, claiming noble lineage. That decision belonged to the boss. What I didn't know was that the boss had been watching the whole time. York, full title Savage Fong York, half-orc hero, purple rank, tier 3, had seen everything from the moment my army appeared on the horizon. A disturbance this big couldn't possibly escape the city lord's notice. If it had, he'd already be a puppet ruler with no real power. He'd heard every word I said, and when I dropped the name, Clenard, something stirred in his memory. 40 years ago, a group of human explorers had passed through Blackstone City before vanishing into the northern blizzards. That was the last time any human had set foot here. York had been young then, not yet a hero, just another orc trying to survive. The details were fuzzy after 4 decades, and honestly, orcs had trouble telling human faces apart anyway. To them, we all looked the same, and our surnames were tongue-twisting nonsense they'd rather forget. But he remembered the humans existed. And now a young man claiming to be their descendant was standing at his gates with 1,000 skeletons and a cartload of trade goods. He also quietly connected the dots to yesterday's incident. The crying orc begging for revenge against a human necromancer who destroyed our tribe. So this was the guy. York stepped onto the wall. The soldiers parted for him instantly. His voice carried down like rolling thunder. I'll allow you to enter. But your undead stay outside. Every last one of them. I frowned slightly. City Lord, I have considerable cargo. My attendant and I can't carry it alone. I'll send my own men to transport your goods. His eyes were sharp despite his age. I swear on Blackstone City's honor. You will face no treachery or injustice within these walls. Leave your army outside. I thought it over for a moment, then nodded. The undead reputation strikes again. Even disguised as an independent necromancer, I was treated like a potential plague carrier. But arguing would only make things worse. Besides, I wasn't worried about my safety. Cisco was walking right next to me, an orange-tier hero who could probably level half this city if provoked. And tucked against my chest was the spatial teleportation scroll. If anything went wrong, I'd vanish before anyone could blink. The massive black stone gates groaned open just wide enough for 2 people to pass. A squad of axe-wielding orc soldiers marched out in formation, eyes locked on us like we were bombs about to detonate. I let them take the carts without fuss. No sudden movements, no suspicious behavior. Trust is built one boring interaction at a time. Under heavy escort, Siska and I walked through the gates and into Blackstone City. Only up close did I get a full read on York through my lord's tome. Savage Fong York. Purple rank, Tier 3. Half-Orc. Skills. Orc Lordship reducing city riots by 10% and boosting Orc morale. Commercial prosperity adding 5% to territory income. And Berserker Rage. The more wounded he got, the stronger and crazier he became. The system note at the bottom was chilling. Due to age, the hero's combat power has declined. However, never provoke a berserk-capable orc hero. When enraged, even they fear themselves. A leadership-type hero. Built for ruling cities and managing economies, not frontline slaughter. But this was still an orc hero. There's no such thing as a weak orc hero. And the berserker skill meant that even at his age, pushing him into a corner would be the last mistake anyone ever made. I filed that away and kept walking. Polite smile. Steady pace. Hands visible. Time to go shopping. York glanced at the weapons stacked on my carts with all the emotion of a man checking the weather. No greed, no excitement. Just business. Blackstone City welcomes traders of all races and factions. No fighting inside the walls. Violators die on the spot. All sales are subject to a 10% trade tax. If that's acceptable, I'll take you to the market. Perfectly acceptable, I said smoothly. I hope this trade can be the beginning of a long and profitable partnership between us. The word, profitable, softened his face just a fraction. Out here on the frozen frontier, everyone understood the same language. Money. Backstabbing might get you a quick score, but it killed repeat business. York was clearly the type who preferred handshakes over ambushes. Reputation mattered to people who thought long-term. As for that orc survivor who'd been crying about his destroyed tribe, I could practically feel York dismissing him from memory. Between a whining refugee with nothing to offer and a human merchant hauling cartloads of quality weapons, the math was simple. His soldiers led us to a prime spot in the marketplace. Good visibility, heavy foot traffic. Within minutes, a crowd of curious orcs and gray dwarves had gathered around us. Blackstone City hadn't seen a human in 40 years. The younger generation had literally never met one. Add in the rumor that an undead army had been spotted outside the gates, and every resident in the city wanted to see what this mysterious visitor was selling. I could see the worry on their faces. An undead necromancer's merchandise. Were we talking bones and rotten meat? I picked up a black iron sword, held it high above my head, and channeled every street vendor from my previous life. Step right up, step right up. Finest human-forged weapons, quality guaranteed. If it's fake, I'll pay you back 10 times. Buy it, and you've already won. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime deal. Dead silence. Every orc, every dwarf, even York watching from the shadows, they all just stared at me. Nobody in this world had ever heard a sales pitch delivered like a carnival barker. The orcs couldn't even understand half of what I said, but fake means 10 times refund came through crystal clear, and the rhythm was so catchy it just sounded trustworthy. People who hadn't planned on buying anything started pushing closer just to watch the show. A big orc shouldered his way to the front, grabbed a sword, and gave it a few test swings. The heavy whoosh of the blade cutting air made his eyes light up. How much? Black iron sword, 10 gold coins. Round wooden shield, 1 coin. I'd already learned the market prices from Dimo the Goblin. Standard rates, nothing inflated. Beast tooth gold, the orc asked hopefully. I smiled. My friend, surely you're joking. Standard continental gold, of course. His face fell. 10 standard coins meant 30 beast tooth coins with the 3-to-1 exchange rate. Orc currency really was trash. That's highway robbery. That's market price, and everyone here knows it, I said without flinching. Besides, these are green quality weapons. Where else in Blackstone City can you buy this many high-grade arms in one place? Someone behind him yelled at him to either buy or get out of the way. The orc looked at the sword in his hand again. He'd felt how sharp and solid it was. Quality doesn't lie. He gritted his teeth. Fine. 10 swords and 20 shields. Beast tooth gold. Wonderful. Right this way for checkout. Siska stepped forward and started bundling weapons with rope at a speed that made the orcs blink. Her tiny hands moved with mechanical precision, because they literally were mechanical. I handled the money while she handled the packaging. A perfect two-person operation. These orcs were born warriors. Their entire culture revolved around fighting, raiding, and hunting. Farming was practically non-existent. Weapons and shields were the most in-demand goods in any orc market, period. I brought exactly what they needed most. I raised my voice again. Anyone with blueprints or rare resources can trade those too. Fair prices guaranteed. An orc immediately pushed through the crowd, carefully producing a yellowed sheet of paper. What can I get for this? My lord's tome identified it as a white quality wall blueprint. Not in my collection yet. One green quality weapon. Really? Deal. The orc practically threw the blueprint at me. He'd expected a couple of wooden shields at best. A genuine green tier iron sword for one lousy white blueprint? To him, I was basically giving things away. To me, I was buying something priceless. Native factions had stockpiles of blueprints that dwarfed anything the transmigrated lords possessed, and they didn't hoard them like paranoid squirrels the way we did. As long as I offered good prices, they'd happily clean out their attics. I shouted one more announcement. Blueprint trades on a first-come basis. I don't accept duplicates, so hurry. That triggered a stampede. Orcs and dwarves who'd been on the fence suddenly shoved forward, terrified someone else would sell the same blueprint first. Orc leather boots, beast hide gloves, beast skin saddle, simple hide tent, all white quality, all daily life items, not a single weapon or armor blueprint in the bunch. Didn't matter. I took every single one. Even if I couldn't use them directly, I could sell them on the transmigrated trading platform later for massive returns. Lords who were still struggling to make basic equipment would pay good money for any blueprint, even mundane ones. Siska kept silently packing orders while I kept loudly attracting customers. The pile of gold coins and blueprints on my side of the counter grew taller by the minute. A grimy gray dwarf covered in coal dust and oil stains elbowed his way to my stall and slammed a blueprint on the table. Human boy, tell me what this is worth. I looked down and my pulse quickened. Steel furnace blueprint. Green quality. This wasn't some random household item. This was industrial infrastructure. A steel furnace could refine iron and copper into proper ingots, which was the foundation of everything I wanted to build. Strategic value through the roof. 10 green quality weapons, I said without blinking. And if you have more green blueprints, same price for each. That was deliberately overpaying. The blueprint itself wasn't worth 10 swords. But I had a feeling this dwarf was sitting on more, and sometimes you spend big to attract bigger fish. His eyes nearly popped out of his soot-covered face. Really? I've got more. He immediately produced 3 additional blueprints. Metal components, black iron mining shovel, and mining site. All green quality. All exactly the kind of industrial blueprints I desperately needed for territorial development. Siska, pack him 40 green weapons. Human boy, you're generous. The dwarf was grinning ear to ear as he scooped up the bundled weapons. We gray dwarves love doing business with straightforward people like you. He vanished into the crowd looking like he'd won the lottery. I watched him go with a small smile. Coming to Blackstone City was the best decision I'd made since landing on this continent. After that, the floodgates opened. Orcs and dwarves kept pushing forward with blueprints pulled from inside their coats, wrapped in hide bundles, tucked into boots. Everyone scrambling to trade before I stopped accepting duplicates. I honestly hadn't expected this. These rough, warrior-obsessed races had been hoarding stacks of blueprints they barely cared about. To them, a piece of paper was worthless compared to a sharp sword. To me, every blueprint was a building block for my territory's future. I bought everything, fingers going numb from counting. Honestly, if I'd known trading was this profitable, I would have skipped all that monster hunting on the ice and come straight here with a wagon full of weapons on day one. The Goblin Trade Association, with their once-a-week visits and limited inventory, could go kick rocks. Free market capitalism was the way. Beyond blueprints, I picked up piles of miscellaneous rare resources. Mostly beast fang stones, common or currency material, but I also scored several natural gems, some ash stones, and then someone casually offered me a unit of magic essence. Magic essence, the single rarest material I needed for the magic wellspring building. I'd been hunting for this stuff since day one. I traded 10 green weapons for it on the spot. Same price as a green blueprint. The orc who sold it walked away beaming, thinking he'd gotten an incredible deal. He wasn't wrong. 10 swords was absurdly generous for one crafting material. But to me, that one magic essence was worth more than everything else I'd traded today combined. Before he disappeared, I called after him. Do you have more of those? The whole crowd turned to look. The orc paused, reading the situation instantly. He could tell I was very interested. What price are you offering? I'll be back in a few days with different merchandise. If you can find more magic essence, same deal as today. He thought it over, nodded, and left. Smart. Didn't commit to having more, didn't deny it either. Left himself room to negotiate later. I could respect that. Business continued at a frantic pace. In under 30 minutes, every single weapon on my carts was gone. The swords outsold the shields by a mile. Orcs would rather charge in swinging than hide behind a piece of wood. Shocking absolutely no one. The shields got bulk purchased by one buyer after the swords ran out, so nothing went to waste. When I tallied up the day's take, even I was stunned. Over a dozen new blueprints. Stacks of rare resources including natural gems, ash stones, and that precious magic essence. More than 20,000 Beast Tooth gold coins plus 3,000 Continental Standard coins. My net worth had multiplied several times over in a single afternoon. I'd walked into this city as a broke lord from a frozen wasteland and was walking out as a legitimate arms dealer. I was loading everything into my spatial ring when a tall orc guard stepped directly into my path. Sir, your total transaction value today is equivalent to 12,000 standard gold coins. Per city regulations, you owe a 10% trade tax of 1,200 standard coins. I frowned. Not because taxes bothered me. Blackstone City provided the platform. They deserved their cut. But the calculation was wrong. Less than 10,000 in gold was direct sales. The rest was barter, goods for goods. Why are you taxing the barter portion? The guard had clearly answered this question 1,000 times before. If you purchased resources with gold coins, we wouldn't tax your purchases. However, exchanging goods for blueprints and resources is equivalent to indirect currency circulation. As the seller, you're responsible for the corresponding tax on all transactions. I got it immediately. Barter undermines the currency system. If I trade swords directly for blueprints, no gold changes hands, and the city collects nothing. But if I'd sold swords for gold, then used that gold to buy blueprints, the city would tax both transactions. By taxing barter at the equivalent rate, they were protecting their revenue stream. Clever. Yerk didn't get to be city lord by being stupid about money. I had to admit, the orc's tax logic was sharper than I'd expected. Dimo the goblin always mocked other races for being stupid, but clearly there were smart people everywhere. I paid up 3,600 Beast Tooth coins without argument. No point burning bridges over pocket change. But the guard didn't take the money. Instead, he said, "The city lord requests your presence." Interesting. When I walked into York's main hall, I found a scene straight out of a bad soap opera. The orc survivor from the camp I'd destroyed, the old shaman's son, was on his knees in front of York, wailing and sobbing, snot dripping everywhere. City Lord, that evil necromancer is inside our city spreading lies and deceiving our people. We must capture him and execute him publicly. I took one look at this pathetic display and sized up the situation instantly. Siska had been stopped at the door. They'd treated her as a common servant and wouldn't let her inside. So it was just me walking into a room full of armed orcs with a crying accuser pointing fingers. Yerk noticed me arrive and casually gestured for me to sit down. The crying orc was still kneeling. That one detail told me everything I needed to know about where York's priorities actually lay. He'd given me a chair. The accuser got the floor. The kneeling orc heard someone enter, whipped his head around, and locked eyes with me. It took him a second. I was wearing the purple moon shadow robe now instead of my ratty cotton coat, so I looked completely different. But there was only one human in Blackstone City. The recognition hit him like a truck. He exploded off the ground, veins bulging, finger jabbing at my face. City Lord. That's him. He destroyed my tribe. He killed my people. York turned to me with a carefully measured expression. He accuses you of massacring his tribe without provocation. Is this true? I looked at the red-eyed, snarling orc. Then I tilted my head slightly, as if genuinely puzzled. Oh, you're a survivor from that camp? Strange. I could have sworn I killed all of you. The room went absolutely silent. York froze. The orc froze. The guards froze. Everyone had expected me to deny it, deflect, make excuses, spin some story about self-defense. Nobody, not a single soul in that room, had anticipated that I'd confirm the massacre outright and casually expressed disappointment that I'd missed one. York recovered first, his face hardening into stone. This wasn't quite how he'd scripted this confrontation, but close enough. He coughed loudly and raised his voice with full authority. Since you've admitted it, how do you intend to resolve this matter? I smiled. Cold and thin. Simple. My wrist flicked. The pale staff hummed. A mana missile fired point blank. No warning. No hesitation. The orc's head burst apart like a watermelon hitting concrete. Red and white splattered across the stone floor. The body crumpled. The smell of blood filled the hall in seconds. Every person in the room turned to stone. The guards couldn't remember the last time anyone had dared to use violence inside Blackstone City, let alone in the city lord's personal hall, right in front of Yerk himself. Jiang Chun. Yerk's palm came down on his wooden chair, and it exploded into splinters. The raw power of a purple-tier orc hero barely contained. His eyes were starting to turn red, the first sign of his berserker skill activating. How dare you? Guards surrounded me instantly. Spears and axes pointed at my throat from every direction. I didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even sit up straighter. I just stayed exactly where I was, relaxed, comfortable, one finger tapping the armrest like I was waiting for tea. City Lord York, I did this for your benefit, I said, my voice perfectly calm. That man was deliberately trying to destroy the partnership we just built. If this situation had escalated, our newly established trade relationship would have been ruined before it even started. York's pupils contracted. The crimson in his eyes deepened. He was on the edge. Are you threatening me? I shook my head gently, my smile widening just a fraction. Threaten my biggest customer? Never. I would only ever offer my valued client the finest, most reliable, highest quality weapons, in unlimited supply, delivered as often as you need them. I leaned forward slightly and lowered my voice, making sure every word landed with precision. I don't think City Lord York would want me to stop coming to Blackstone City for business. Would he? I sat there without a shred of fear on my face, and it wasn't bravado. It wasn't even about Siska waiting outside. She was a support hero, and in a full city siege, even an orange tear might fall. My confidence came from Yerk himself. From the moment I'd walked in, he'd told me to sit while the accuser knelt. That told me his real position on this matter before anyone said a word. He'd never planned to punish me. He just wanted to use the orc's complaint as leverage, a little intimidation, a small power play, maybe squeeze some concessions out of me. Standard negotiation tactics. I simply chose to skip the game entirely and go straight to the conclusion.